Me and CCP Hellmar are gonna have a conversation. We've prepared 12 topics that we want to go through. We're not entirely sure how long this conversation will be, but we have comfortable chairs and we have good crowds and yeah.
3 hours set aside.
Yeah.
So it might go up to that.
Might go up to 3 hours. But first question, Hellmar, or first topic. Death is a serious matter.
Yes, I think we've said that often. This was the first thing that was written in the script for EVE Online. Before EVE Online was made, there was a massive script detailing out all the game written out. It is as thick as a phone book. And even the table of contents of covering EVE Online as it was imagined takes, I think, up to 10 pages just to have in that script. And this was the first sentence: death is a serious matter. Once that was written down, everyone went out and got beer.
As you do.
As you do. But that is very much that has set the tone for EVE Online.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the unique value propositions. It's maybe not completely unique anymore. Many games have taken inspiration from it and even taken it further. But this is kind of the hairpin that everything about EVE stands on.
Do you feel that this idea of death being a serious matter, do you think that is kind of the grounding for the reality of New Eden?
So I think as we have kind of refined the formula, done experiments, and also just understanding of psychology and humans has just evolved in the last 20 years since this was written down, is that this actually has a lot to do with how humans learn in a learning loop. And you could say death, but you could also say failure.
Yeah.
Like failing is the most robust way to learn.
Yeah.
And in the context of EVE, losing your ship and getting potted is a form of failure. So I think that aspect of the game, you go out in the world with a hypothesis, and you get destroyed and potted. And that is the moment where you either bounce back, you learn something, you adopt or adapt. I always say adopt. And you adapt. And I think this loop goes a lot into this, why EVE Online is interesting and why it stays interesting for such a long time, is that there are so many ways to fail, and there are so many ways to fail at different scales, and this constitutes a learning loop, and when people are learning, they stay interested.
Yeah.
So if death in EVE Online stops being a serious matter, that is usually the point in time where the game has become too safe for somebody to learn anything more.
Yeah.
Because this really sort of orchestrates this loop of how human beings learn. They learn by trying and failing, evolving your thesis, retesting, and going on again and again. And usually when you're tapped out in a game is that either it's a linear game and it's just over, or it's a game where it's like you have nothing more to learn from this game.
But I mean, death has been a taboo topic, for centuries, and it's been, we've seen it in pop culture go everywhere from being like something you can't really talk about to the wonderful 80s and 90s where, a Jean-Claude Van Damme film, if it didn't have like 5,000 deaths in it, it was a shitty film. To like, some interesting paths in gaming and cheesy deaths and deaths that didn't relate to you. But how do we make death relatable in a game? How do we make death relatable in something like EVE Online?
Well, I think in the beginning, it was a pretty serious matter. Yeah. I remember when I first died in EVE Online. It was a story I talked about at the 10-year anniversary of EVE, where I had borrowed a spaceship of a friend of mine inside EVE Online and lost it to a gate camp while on the toilet. And when I saw the pod on the screen for the first time as a pod. And it was kind of interesting actually with that when I saw the pod for the first time in the game as my pod, because I used to use the pod when I was making the 3D engine. It was a kind of a test object. I would often stare at it, so the imagery of a pod was not unknown to me, but what it represented was epic failure of mine of playing my quote-unquote own game, getting potted while at the toilet because I didn't check the security status path. By the way, that feature with the dots were added after that. There was like a feature request. We need to paint up the path ASAP. And that was a pretty serious matter. And I remember going through this kind of, I was standing there in front of the huge screen we had back then, looking at the pod, thinking, oh my God, the ship of my friend got destroyed. And then I had the thought of like, wait a minute, I am the CTO of this company. I can just go to ESP and make another spaceship. And then I became super disappointed in myself for having the thought. Why does that feel so wrong? And I think in that moment, it very much solidified for me that it is a real world. Death is a serious matter. It's a real economy. So at the back of that, I ended up actually mining for 3 weeks during my paternity leave to pay back the ship to my friend in Eve. So I also started to understand like relationship obligations and all those things in Eve are extremely real. So I think this notion, I think any Eve players have, and we've now started to codify this as the magic moment. Like when you die in EVE Online for the first time, that we call the magic moment, which is either when you where you start to learn and you move on, or it's the moment where you lose out. And what we have seen is that, and in my particular case, when I died, it was interesting because I blamed myself. I knew what I should have done, and we usually see that with EVE players in their follow-on life. If when they die, they understand what they did wrong and they can learn from it, then they end up being productive citizens of EVE Online. If they die, but they have no comprehension of why they died, they have no agency in it, they have no sense of control or understanding, then there's no mastery to have, and then people often just leave.
And it's really interesting because we've also found that it's having that understanding, having that context when you die, but it's also about who you die with and who you die against. If you die in a fleet, if you fleet up and you die with all the people, 2 other people are way more willing to stick around, and they will kind of, I guess, blame themselves for the mistakes, versus if people die to NPCs or if people die for a gate camp, even against another player. It's interesting to kind of see how important the human interaction, the human element plays in this.
It's actually interesting in that context, because the game often does a very poor job of putting your action in the context so you understand what just happened. Initially, the death experience of EVE Online was extremely jarring. It was just like you were there in your ship and like, plug, you're in a space station. Now we at least have a death scene. The moment is
beautiful explosions.
The moment is contextualized a little bit. In the early days, it was more just like a session change. You're in your pod and now you're in a station, just a black loading screen. But the game still needs to do a way better job of relating to you what happened, so you can learn from it. But in the meantime, the new player fleets, people are putting it in context for people. You can explain to the person, because the game is not good at it, why this was a dumb thing
happened.
And then people can learn. So it's that social aspect which makes that magic moment be a productive one or an unproductive one. The game needs to be better, but in the meantime, new player organizations have done miracles for the game in putting this in context for people as they die.
And we actually learn a lot from new player corporations on these things, and a lot of this research about the importance of death and when you die and how you die was actually triggered from conversations with players and conversation with, these noob roams or corporations, and yeah, we were actually quite surprised. Kind of, it was kind of silly that we hadn't kind of thought about this more. I mean, we had thought about it, but we hadn't put like serious research into it.
No, if there's anything I've learned about EVE Online, all great ideas seem like stupidly obvious once you've had them.
Yeah.
But the journey of getting to them is often rather long and embarrassing.
Yes, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's amazing how long meetings can be about almost nothing.
Yeah.
So the images that are kind of rolling behind us extremely slowly, we decided to gather some of our favorite fan art, and I made a call out to our fellow CCPers to send me their favorite fan art. So every image you're going to see in this presentation is from the community. Sadly, I did not manage to kind of capture everyone's name and put on the bottom, but you will just have to shout on Twitch and Twitter if your image was used, and thank you. Also, we're going to take questions on each topic, both from the auditorium and also from Twitch, and we have people reading through Twitch, trying to read through Twitch chat, and they will bring questions as they come. So maybe with that, should we take a question from you guys or from Twitch?
Yeah, on the topic of death being serious.
On the topic of death being serious matter.
I have one.
Yeah.
Are you willing to bring back the SP lossing when you die?
So the question, to repeat, are we willing to take back SP lossing when you die? Yeah. I think there needs to be an escalation of the importance of death as people progress.
Yep.
Whether that is using the SP loss mechanic. I mean, we obviously took that out. I'm not sure just putting that back in is the right path.
No.
But there is something about the risk-reward dynamics of you now have a very high skill point character, and the stakes are higher for that character. So I've always been a fan of finding something which is maybe more inspired by that, which was a bit of a shortcut, frankly.
Yeah.
Where like parts of your character progression can be at risk, but no really sort of, well, we haven't really put it properly in motion and coming up with good game design for it. But I think there's a point in time where the escalation of the importance of dying has to follow your overall character progression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there are people in EVE where a dying is, I mean, almost just a method of travel.
Yeah.
It's there's nothing important anymore.
Yeah, and the clone is kind of, there is a very interesting conversation in kind of the importance of the clone itself, and at the death of the clone, yes, you will lose your implants, but what else do you lose in death? Like, I mean, kind of the conscience stays on and stays living, and the body disappears.
Yeah. Well, the implants are actually a good example of voluntary at-risk behavior. Like, oh my God, how many implants I've lost in Abyssal Dead Space. And I always think, like, I got this. Like, why am I bothering with going into another clone to go there? And then every time I die, it's seriously embarrassing. I get so easily confused in what clone I'm in, and I always forget to check. Yeah, but there's something in that which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I think there is something in this sort of jump clone concept where you have kind of different bodies your consciousness can inhabit, and those different bodies have different consequences when it comes to death. I think there is something we can explore there. And even just like if you look at the user interface or the user experience of interfacing with jump clones, it is rather uninspired.
I mean, it should be really dramatic, leaving one body to go into the next one.
Yeah, but there is something there about like, okay, now I'm mining, I'm in my mining body, now I'm fighting, I'm in my fighting body. They have different risk dynamics. There is something about like inspired by the skill points, taking cues from the implants.
Yeah.
I think there's probably also something about the attributes, which is extremely ancient design.
Convoluted design.
Yeah, finding a way to combine this into an elegant system that then has this aspect of like, okay, I am putting chips on the table, and I've decided to do that because now I'm super engaged and I'm doing something I really care about, and then the stakes are higher, and then the depth is more meaningful.
Yeah, but the key here is that you need to make that decision.
Exactly.
It's your decision. It's not us for, you know, taking out random skill points because you died.
Exactly. Every time I'm losing implants in Abyssal Dead Space, I'm not blaming the game.
No.
I know I am the one who's stupid.
Yeah.
I just don't learn anything from it. That's the
learning.
To go further on that question, like way back when there was this MMO game called Crone.
Yes.
And when you died, you had a temporal loss of skills. Like you've got your skill points and you've learned them, you've earned them, and then you had a period of time because of the shock that you had because you died, you actually had like, let's say 20% less efficiency at your own skills. So you basically started running at minus 20. Best gun wasn't usable at that time just because you didn't have the skills right then. And after time, when your body just relapsed of that, then you had your skill points back and you could use your best weapon again. So maybe that's something you can look into. Kind of like the jump fatigue system, but then towards your skills because you died.
So I'm trying to summarize this for the stream. So a member of the audience has referenced a game called Crone, which is interesting that people are bringing up ancient MMOs. I actually followed Crone quite at the time. And in Crone, there was a dynamic that you had a temporal loss every time you died. And then once you were recovering from death, you had like a negative 20% sort of debuff on your progression because you were just died. You're kind of quote unquote hungover from death. I think, I mean, that is is like an interesting pattern to sort of evolve from. I actually would think like doing the reverse would be interesting. That taking away a set of your skill points in even line example, but then giving you an acceleration for a period of time that you can gain them back quicker. I play a lot of idle games. It's just something that fits my lifestyle quite well to play idle games. And there are aspects of EVE Online certainly which are either inspired by idle games or are the inspiration of idle games. Many idle game makers call EVE Online the first idle game. Like many blockchain people call EVE Online the first blockchain game without using a blockchain. And there is something in there, the death mechanic of idle games, where you sacrifice your progress for increased speed and regaining the process. That loop, I think, is interesting. So if we were to take the Crone example but flip it, of like, okay, now I've died, death gives me like growth and learning. Well, okay, then you progress faster for a while after you died. And of course, that becomes seriously exploitable if you put it like that in the hands of EVE players. That would be, death is now what you do on a minute-by-minute basis. But I think there is something in this element of like playing around with like risk and consequences, making it more meaningful, having the pain gets growth and learning, and then having some aspect of it. I, for example, have always been very curious about having permadeath in EVE, where you can play a version of a clone, which is just permadeath. And if you're playing a permadeath character, you have some different advantage and disadvantage. And even just like a seasonal high score list of like survivability of permadeath characters is an interesting dynamic to add to the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a favorite bar topic, the whole idea of permadeath, and if it's if it should be a kind of a 20-minute character or a lifetime character and things like that. But you run into some very very interesting scenarios with a perma-killable character. Where loss definitely has a very dramatic meaning and
yes, but it is like with Eve we have so much flexibility because of the single shardness and like whatever the game is so vast to add it like as an option because often when people are doing permadeath MMOs and this is like the favorite topic like you say of any MMO maker is like you get MMO makers into bars and talk about permadeath but like adding that like as an option
basically as a hardcore mode.
Yeah, or your clones have a set of like one of them could be permadeath, and when you're really feeling it, you take your permadeath clone out for a spin, and that has some like risk-reward dynamics, which are interesting. That would be a way to sweat bullets.
Do we have anything from
the Twitch chat?
Yeah.
Yep. We have one question. How will our current pilots be affected with the new pod death? Does that make sense? All right, I'll ask you this one.
Yeah.
Paulie McCoy says, risk versus reward. Have you you have increased risk? When will rewards increase?
Yes. Oh, okay. It's maybe not in the context of this topic, but still, like you can definitely ninja it into it. And I think actually CCP Rise covered this very well on the Talking Station podcast on Sunday.
Yeah.
We were in a risk-reward dynamic asymmetry where there were too much rewards against the risk involved.
Absolutely.
Now with everything that's been going on over the summer, we've definitely addressed kind of that issue to some extent. If you look at our ISK faucets and our sinks, they're in a much better place. They're frankly probably now almost at a deficit. So now we have space to increase the rewards again, and that's a really good place to be in.
Yeah.
Because before we were kind of in the place, we couldn't really add anything because the money supply was so out of control.
Yeah, and I mean the money supply was the distribution of that faucets was very unhealthy in a way because you had a lot of is coming into the game in small pockets and us not really having the opportunity to add more rewards to the earlier game
or even the later game.
Even the later game.
So I would say the answer now we are the first time in a long time in a situation where we actually could potentially increase rewards.
Yeah.
But we were not there before the actions of the summer.
Yeah.
Because the money sink and faucet situation was out of control.
Yeah. But I mean it's going to be a very careful decision where we're going to add rewards, and we are doing some work in kind of mapping out the whole game and and getting better dials to really be strategic about where we balance rewards.
Yeah, and I think as we do it, it's going to be not this stable, predictable situation we saw before.
No.
There was just too much sort of, you find the honeypot and it goes on for a decade.
Yeah.
And it's going to be less like that.
Absolutely.
You have the question?
So how about the birthday you said you have something lost. How about you lost the ship? You can fly that ship like a certain period of time, like 1 hour or something. You need to change the ship you are flying.
So if you lose the ship, you can still fly the ship?
No, you cannot fly the same ship you lose. Change ship type or...
Yeah, it's a question from the audience, which basically involves if you die in a particular type of ship, you could not fly that ship for a period of time. It would be blocked, kind of inspired by the Crone. Yeah. There's penalty, lasting penalty. Yeah, and again, I mean, there's like this map of ingredients you can use to sort of affect the dynamics of risk rewards in the context of death, current topic. This might be one to put into that.
Yeah.
But I think there is a point in time where we take some good whack at this.
Absolutely.
Because it's been stagnant for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean it's a very favorite topic of mine. I'm very passionate about death.
Yeah.
And we're in Finland, and it's good to talk about death in Finland. So, next topic. invest in new players. So we've been quite open about us basically doubling down and doubling down on the early game and early retention, and kind of the banner I've been waving a lot is that we owe it to you guys to get more people into the game, because more players equals more content, which equals a way better game for everyone. And on a more personal note, I mean, EVE Online is so amazing. It's so epic, and it's such a shame that not more people get to enjoy it. And this year it's been a very interesting ride this year in kind of doing this shift, because we have a lot of expertise in the mid to later game, but we don't have that much expertise in the early game. And we have actually, we've done a lot of, interesting experiments in our, what we've called until now, new player experience. But I think the big shift now is that one of the things that we're doing is rather than looking at the new player experience as a single team's problem, it is the whole dev team's problem. If you can't pay in a certain country, finance and legal need to, get their stuff together. And if you can't progress to the next step of your tutorial, like, design and UX need to, double down and figure out what's wrong. And it's been a really interesting journey last couple of months, kind of going through the new player experience again. And we've kind of kicked off an effort at CCP where we have a couple of longer term projects, but we also have a lot of small projects, and we've kind of categorized them into the first 30 hours, which I codename, fix the bleeding. And the second effort is kind of diving into the first 30 days, and we call that kind of fix the stupid. And it's incredible.
How much stupid stuff is there?
How much stupid stuff is there? I'm trying to find like more polite ways of saying it, but
hey, we're just here in somebody's house. We can speak plainly.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
There's nobody listening. These guys, I guess. Hello.
Yeah, but it's yeah. I mean, it's sometimes like, late at night when I'm going through the first steps, 3 hours of EVE. I'm amazed that people actually survive.
Yeah.
In many cases.
Yeah, there's a few things I think it's good to sort of repeat. I think both of us have been talking about this quite a bit on the World Tour. Mm-hmm. You did a talk in Toronto, which was really good, and I at EVE Down Under, where we have been even showing just the detailed numbers.
Yeah.
So because often I get this impression, even within CCP or with EVE players, that EVE Online has a player base.
Yeah.
And it's just not really true. Like the player base of EVE Online is like a river. It's like a river that flows down, and there's like a silt that builds up at the bottom. And you can look at the silt at the bottom, which is the current player base, kind of like it's like the lines in a tree. Like every year we get a crop of new players, and that becomes that sort of annualized set of EVE players, which then retain for different amounts from a year to 16 years. But of all the past cohorts, people are always leaving out of those cohorts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just inevitable. People don't live forever, for example. There's always a backstop to how many people of the 2003 cohort are going to continue to play online. Every single day, somebody from that cohort is leaving, either just because they're tapped out, they had a baby, or they're just frankly not alive anymore. So each cohort that comes into the game, it's very important to retain it. And what people might think when you have a 16-year-old MMO is that we have a problem on getting in new players. And that counterintuitively is exactly not our problem. Yeah. The number of new people coming into EVE Online every year has been increasing through time, not decreasing. Yeah. And as we hire people from the MMO industry and everyone sort of compare notes, This is not the trend you see in other MMOs.
Oh no! And people are very surprised of
Yeah.
how many people we actually get through.
Yeah, and to sort of just put concrete numbers, every single week, about 12 to 20,000 people log into EVE Online for the first time. So it's a lot of people. The problem is 7 days later, 90% of them are no longer there. And the 10% that remain, well, they have a half-life down from 30, 60 to 90. By day 90, you are sort of a citizen of EVE Online.
Yeah.
But not really until like 6 months into it. Then you are like a classified, bona fide EVE player that will then continue on. Yeah, there's a question.
Have you looked on the data screen how many minutes those
New players play
Yes.
before they quit.
Yes. Okay. It's rather scary how few the minutes are they play.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are a lot of booby traps in the funnel of new players. I think booby traps is a good word.
Yeah,
based on
absolutely.
What we have discovered. And when Bergur is saying stop the bleeding and fix the stupid, some of these things are rather stupid and embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's and it is because we are so preoccupied with managing EVE Online as a huge virtual world inhabited by like violently passionate and demanding player base that it's so easy for us to get distracted into that. Where the opportunity for EVE Online actually lies in embracing more of the people coming in. We had 600,000 people log in for the first time last year. 600,000 people is a lot of people. It's like double the population of Iceland logged into EVE Online for the first time. And if we improve from losing 90% in 7 days down to like 85% in 7 days, even that little change, it's actually 85 is not enough, but if we get it to 75%, EVE's future growth trajectory massively changes. Whereas retaining people longer and longer and longer is an excellent way to sustain EVE, but it's not a good plan to grow EVE. So as people are sort of debating all these things, why are we doing this? We're doing this because this is the best way to set EVE Online up for future growth for the third decade.
Yeah.
And while we're shaking up things for the current player base, we're doing that for different reasons. I think the game concretely has gotten quite stagnant, and certainly in my World Tour experience has been talking to a lot of people which are just dead bored on doing the same thing over and over again. But the plan for growth of EVE Online relies on doing a better job on this front.
Yeah. And actually kind of to give you guys some concrete examples of for instance, fix the bleeding, because you said booby trap. I mean, end of July, we got in a fix where when you create a new character, in the past, the character model itself was quite kind of late in the download on demand process. So people on poor connections had to wait up to 3-4 minutes just to load the 3D model. But by just moving the 3D model into the initial download, like we're seeing like 30% jump in day 3 retention, which is, yeah, it's just like it hopped up like massively.
Yeah, I know. You have the same reaction as many people at CCP had. Because often there is the attitude that the new player experience of EVE is like a test of whether you're worthy. Like when I played EVE Online for the first time, I didn't need no tutorial. There was no tutorial when I played. But it's like two things. Like number one, the game has changed a lot.
And it's way more complex and deep.
Absolutely.
Versus when you started playing.
Absolutely. When I started playing, we had 30 spaceships. Now we have 300 spaceships. It's like the choice paralysis of having 10x the number of spaceships to choose from, or the confusion of just understanding, I as a new player, what should I be doing with all these things? That is one. Then the UI complexity sprawlness has just like we've added and added and added to the UI. If you take a screenshot of EVE in 2003 and you take a screenshot of EVE in 2013, and now you just see like the XLness has improved considerably.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. And then there's another aspect of like people today And I even feel it myself. I had just now, today, have zero tolerance for bad UX.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't bother. If I play a game and the UX is just like retarded, I just like, oh, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to read that manual about how to do things in the game. I just want to do things in the game.
And I mean, this is something I remind our developers a lot. You know, the game came out in 2003.
Yeah.
2003 was a way different era.
Exactly. It was in a box with a CD-ROM.
Yeah.
It had and an actual booklet, a manual.
I mean, the min-spec machine is like, you can't even use it as a paperweight because it's too big.
Yeah.
I mean, there were still a lot of people on dial-up modems, and 4 years after EVE Online came out, we had the first iPhone. So it's a completely different world, and people evolve, and we have to evolve.
Yeah, and we have to do it for EVE. And I know when we talk about this, and often players come to me, it's like, are you dumbing down the game? Are you making it more casual, etc.? And like, it's entirely not about that. There is this kind of element of like complexity is not a bad thing, but context-less complexity, just because we haven't finished our job on putting the context out there so people understand what they're doing so they can learn from it. That is bad.
Yeah.
And EVE is full of these kind of bad complexity examples, like there's an element like which is called tracking complexity, comprehension complexity. Then you have a lot of this kind of depth level complexity, which actually EVE does not have as much as it should have. There are aspects of EVE which are super deep, like the fitting game, the market, like there are elements which are super deep, but a lot of the game is very shallow in parts, where it's just full of this kind of comprehension complexity, which is turning away very efficiently 500,000 people last year.
Yeah.
Question from Chris Chat. When you guys are looking at the metrics of the attrition rates of new players, how do you distinguish real new players from just someone who's rolled an alt or something?
Yeah, we have continually been investing in ways to classify what are genuine new players. Yeah. Not only just the issue of here's an alt, but there's a lot of noise in the system. Yeah. A lot of botting behavior generates a lot of accounts. We have to filter those out. We have to filter out, obviously, alt accounts. We have to figure out alt accounts which people are trying to hide from us. Yeah. So we do spend a lot of time in figuring out what is a genuine new player. Yeah. And I think we can say with fair amount of certainty, these numbers we're quoting here are actual new human beings, legitimately trying to play online. Yeah.
And what do you think? What do you think the impact on that attrition rate comes from the UI side of things with EVE that you were talking about before? Have you done any sort of in-house testing with players to see, genuine players to see how that goes?
Well, we've been role-playing these user tests.
Yeah.
Very good. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So we're actually, as a part of this effort, we are starting to way more user testing in-house, and to get that kind of up and running, we've been fetching both like old EVE players that haven't played EVE for a while to get them, to run through, and also just brand new EVE players in-house. And we've been trying to we've been trying to do user testing, but it's very difficult not to jump in and try to help people out when they are trying to warp to something, or double or triple, or clicking each step of the activate step of the tutorial 7 times and restarting it, and it's actually, there is a lot of fix the stop the bleeding projects that have come out of those role-playing session, quote unquote, that are some of them have actually been shipped, and others are about to be shipped in September. So
yeah, it's we have actually, over the summer, while everything else has been going on and half the company on summer vacation, we have made great progress both on like disarming some of the booby traps and fixing some of the UX. Some of it requires a bigger investment, and some of it actually involves elements which are something about the fundamental of the game, because there is this aspect of Eve, like even if we fix the UX, fix the entry, the
Yeah.
funnel, and all that, there is something about the promise of what EVE Online is in your head when you come into it,
Yeah.
and the first thing you do in the game, and there's a jarring disconnect
Yes.
in how you interact with your spaceship,
Yeah.
which at some point we need to find a better way to onboard you into that. It's just very hard to feel like you're flying a spaceship the way it is, and it's not just the point and click interface. There's just how the response rate of the ship to your action is.
Yeah, the weight of the ship.
Yeah, how it banks, how it like, how the camera interacts with it. It just doesn't feel.
It's also that because the trails are not like, it's not true trails.
Yeah.
And so you don't get a sense of, exactly how you've moved. You're always just kind of, going straight or in a curve that's always seems to be the same. And we kind of lose depth because of it. And we lose a kind of a physical connection to the game because of it. And I think I think one of the first things I wrote on a whiteboard when we kind of when we started this journey that we're on now is we have to fulfill the promise of sci-fi as soon as possible. Like people come into the game after seeing a trailer or have their favorite sci-fi they love, and we should be the ultimate sci-fi. We are the ultimate sci-fi. It's a spaceship game you can interact with. It's a world you're an active participant and you're writing the story of the world. So we fulfill this kind of promise of sci-fi later on, but how can we give you that sci-fi sense minute one?
It's actually I'm like what we've been doing with Ether Wars.
Yeah.
Like while we couldn't get it exactly as we made a single player version of Ether Wars before we made the multiplayer version, and there we had like probably the best spaceship flight dynamics models I've seen, and comparing like all the space game out there, Eve and Valkyrie and all that, and finding a way to get that way to fly a spaceship into Eve, I think would deliver a lot quicker on this promise. Yeah. We don't need to explain, it just feels awesome from the beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's also that's one of the great things with Abyssal Dead Space. We got to really test out new hypotheses and new things we hadn't done before, and this kind of adding more foreground and midground, not only pure background. Yeah, is super. Yeah, it just gives the game more depth. But then it's the second layer is then how do you interact with it? How do you move?
Yes.
And how do we echo that? Yeah.
We take a 10-minute break.
We're gonna do a 10-minute break.
Yeah, on to the next topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're down 2 topics, 10 to go.
Okay, we're making 10.
10-minute break.
Okay. Here.
All right, welcome back, guys. Most requested thing on Twitch is Ronja, and we found a trick to keep Ronja around for maybe as long as the treats last.
The community team keeps growing.
Yeah, the community team keeps growing.
The mascot.
So we were talking about investing in new players, and one of the interesting things we found in our research is EVE Online, the friendship machine, and kind of investigating that further, we kind of found this actually EVE Online, the skill builder, and how it can teach people tangible real world skills.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey how this came to be. So I think most people that track EVE Online with some detail by now know who CCP Ghost is.
Yeah.
And CCP Ghost has a pretty interesting background. He was working for the Special Prosecutor Office of Iceland, sorting out the economic collapse before he joined CCP. Very interesting background.
Basic.
It's what you need when you're operating a virtual world.
Yeah.
And there he developed very good, what should I call them, interview skills. and there was a moment in time last year where we were kind of strategizing about these, as we do endlessly. And I think you and I were talking about like, okay, why do people play for decades? And I think we've always instinctively understood, and it's even in the inception documents of the game, is that you join for the game, but you stay for your friends.
Yeah.
Obviously, nobody actually does play a game for 16 years. Well, there might be cases of it, but you can't really build a business or a strategy out of that. But this it's back. This concept of, okay, how does this really happen? How do the making a friend, staying for your friend, staying for the community, like, can we get some more depth into this so we can get it more actionable and we can develop it more into a strategy? So we asked CCP Ghost to go, and why don't we just talk to the people that are the most EVE players there are. And now that we have such data infrastructure, which has been growing with CCP now, especially in the past sort of 5 years when we started a big push on that front, we can kind of identify which are the most sort of prototypical EVE players we want to model and figure out how their story came to be. And of course, EVE Online has this reputation of being a PvP game. It's a hard, complicated space game and all that. So you would have a certain impression of what an EVE player is based on that. But when we really looked at the data, who are the most productive citizens of EVE Online, and talked to them, most people self-identified as helpers. And the most prominent archetype of an EVE player is somebody who wants to help others. And of course, we have amazing examples in the community.
Absolutely.
I think Greygal stands out. I think Greygal has, through her action, Greygal has onboarded 10,000 people into EVE Online. Way better than our new player experience. And she single-handedly, with all the people working with her, has just materially affected the course of the game through this element of helping others. And then, okay, why is that the archetype of an EVE player? And then it goes into this because EVE Online is so tough, so confusing, nobody knows what to do, so punishing and brutal, that people just do need a lot of help playing the game. So in a way, it's kind of fertile ground for this to come together.
Yeah, and to create, I mean, it calls for playing together. It calls for co-playing.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I mean, yeah, you can, like, you know, have your supers and do all the stuff, but you know, it's only half the fun if it's not with other people.
Yeah, and then building on that, we found that a lot of people in this group, they very concretely told us stories, many stories, of how EVE Online had increased their friends network, and not just like giving you more acquaintances, but giving you actual real friends.
Yeah.
And it's actually a pretty magical thing to have a friend. I don't think people appreciate, especially later on in life, how rare it does happen that you gain a new friend.
Yeah, that you make a new friend.
Yeah.
And especially now with like all these studies coming out on loneliness being, I mean, it's just become a health concern, a global health concern. And yeah, basically kind of, you know, EVE allowing you to build these meaningful relationship. And I mean, I'm not talking about with the game, but, you know, with, you know, people with one another.
Yeah.
It's actually really magical. And yeah, I mean, I remember when I saw this presentation from Ghost for the first time, I was like, there was like a whole new world that opened up to me.
Yeah.
I'd never thought about the game in this way. Like, I probably kind of felt it was almost tacky thinking about the game in this way. You know, it's a hardcore EVE, sci-fi.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, over the years, this has come up, but the level of depth, precision, accuracy we have now on it, that EVE Online is a friendship-making machine. Like, friendship is the best ship. It's just true. The data shows, both empirically and anecdotally. I think a lot of people at CCP have found a renewed sense of purpose on developing these aspects of the game.
Absolutely.
And frankly, some of the actions we've been taking, while there may be, you can't draw an obvious line between these two things, of increasing challenges for veteran players and decreasing challenges for people coming into it. But it's actually this asymmetry which actually creates this context where the friendship can occur.
Yeah.
And it's now we got these results now almost 18 months ago, so we have been sort of systemizing, okay, how can we improve this aspect of the game, and we have found a formula. There's a formula on how you make a friend.
Yeah. Frequency times proximity times frequency times proximity times, what is the last one?
Intensity.
Intensity.
Yes.
It's
it's duration, intensity, frequency, and proximity.
Yeah.
And obviously, why EVE Online is so good at this is that intensity.
Yeah.
It is on, and it's actually another element that is good at making new friendships is actually going to war together.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people we talk to are veterans
Yep.
of various militaries in the world that have gone to war, and they describe EVE Online in this way, that there's nothing like going to combat with people that build like true friendships, except EVE Online. And like it's extremely, in a way, strange and humbling to hear people say that and know what they're talking about. But now that we have this new lens to develop the game under, of okay, how can we make proximity a thing where people meet each other more often? How can we like manage the intensity?
Yeah.
How can we make longer durations?
Yeah.
How can we allow the game to help,
Yeah.
but not in some like weird, creepy way of like trying to sort of artificially make friendships,
Yeah.
but kind of strengthen these conditions.
And also this formula, because it's a world tour world. We can much easier kind of turn the dials of intensity or proximity, and it's actually a really good formula to have in mind when you're developing, for instance, new players. Like, when you're new, you need more higher frequency. You need, more spikes of intensity, and you need a little shorter duration because you don't want to, burn people out too quickly.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting tool to mirror kind of what we do against. And it's amazing how little oftentimes you have to, tweak things to really, create magical results.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a pretty profound moment for everyone at CCP going through this journey. And like I said, it's not because this is unknown to people. There are so many stories, there are so many anecdotes, people have personally experienced this also. But like now that we have this level of precision and depth, it becomes something that you can develop into a strategy, and then thinking of what you're working on is actually improving and increasing relationships in the world, when then the World Health Organization has shown how many friends you have, real friends, correlates with length of life, health, happiness, and purpose. And if we're making a game, all of us here together, that decreases these things, we're making people live longer, be happier, have more purpose and health in their lives. Actually, we have a computer game that's making people more healthy. I think that was not something we were thinking about that much a year ago.
It's a crazy twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
No one
science.
saw that coming.
No, it's science.
So.
Yeah, and then we also had the skills thing. Let's comment on that a little bit. Because it was this, in this study also, what came out is that, and it's now almost a catchphrase, EVE Online gives you friends and skills.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone who plays EVE Online has a problem understanding that you get new skills from playing the game. But what is interesting, and came through this study also while we were not studying it, is that the skills you gain in EVE Online are extremely marketable commodities in the real world. And we now have a new set of data which we've both done through this study, but also we've sort of crowdsourced all of the internet, Reddit included. It's obviously a social media bot that does this. Poor robot.
Let's read all of Reddit.
Yeah, all of the Eve subreddit. And out of that, we have gathered these stories of various anecdotal evidence of people learning skills from Eve they've concretely employed in their professional life.
Yeah.
And I actually, in the sauna yesterday, heard an extremely humbling story of a Finnish Eve player who's here, who had been unemployed for 6 years. But through Eve, he had learned some lead skills in the field of video production. And he's been producing Eve videos for the 6 years he was unemployed. And he's put it on YouTube. We have actually used them. They're actually really good. And now he has a job in video production. So now he is working and making a living with the skills he concretely learned in Online. There's no more concrete story than this person. Yeah.
That's true. Actually, I run my own video business nowadays.
Yes, it's due to Eve Online. And I heard another interesting story. Apparently, there's a Finnish Eve player through running organizations in Eve Online, gained the understanding and confidence to start his own business. He now runs a business in Finland. Every time he's thinking of a new HR program to install in his real business, he first tests it in his Eve corporation to see if it actually incentivizes the right thing. And then he rolls it out in his new company. I was like, I happen to run a company and have a game to experiment with.
That's very, we could.
Yeah, this new employee program.
It's wonderful. It works really well. Okay, hop to the next topic. It's an interesting topic. Long-term tech investment.
Yeah, this actually is a topic dear to my heart. I used to be a CTO of CCP. And we obviously laid down a lot of tech foundations 2 decades ago. And it's frankly shocking how much it's held up.
Yeah, and
but it's also shocking how much it's creaking at the seams right now. So you and I think we have been communicating already about some of this. We're now doing a lot of sort of deeper, more long-term investment in the sort of foundations of Eve. The 64-bit client of Eve is an example of that. The move to DirectX 12 is an example of that, and we've only seen the start of what that can bring to Eve.
Yeah, and also things like Ether Wars are definitely an investment into the future. I mean, we're testing out, is this technology something that's viable for the long term?
Yeah.
And it's no better way of testing it, but actually, putting it in the hands of Eve players to break it and break it fast.
Yeah.
And we've been seeing really, really, really interesting results from it. And we actually learned a lot, both from just kind of, working with a new backend.
Yeah.
But also just kind of, because it's all done in Unreal 4, just having to go through like all the control schemes, all the kind of how we built our visuals. It's been a very interesting kind of almost like an auditing on kind of the core fundamentals of.
Yeah, it's actually shocking how much it has progressed. We only do 2 tests, and it's a tiny team that's working on this. Obviously, most of CCP is busy with Eve Online, but already it's proven so much. And I would say like the last experiment now on Sunday. Time flies. It actually was getting quite close to. You might actually see how this becomes a game on its own outside of what we're learning from it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what comes of it.
Yeah, and we have a ton of data. We're sorting through all of that. We'll share all of it. We obviously didn't beat our world record yet, or the players' world record. And while that is it's a good thing for the press to talk about. It isn't the record isn't the thing per se. It's all the learnings we come from. It's just an anchor to do. But hopefully at some point we'll get 10,000 people into it.
Yeah. And I think, it's, Eve. We've been going on for 16 years, we're gonna go on for at least another 16 years. If as long as I'm here, we're gonna keep on rocking. And it calls for like continuous development of our tech. And
yeah, and it's also like it's well, this is true for all games, but I think it's particularly true for EVE. How much of the game is dictated by the limitations of the tech.
Yeah.
If you go back to the screenshot you had, I don't hide. I love that thing. Is that there are elements in the physics engine of the game which dictate whether actually something like this can happen or not. And it's not necessarily just time dilation and performance. To get EVE to run, we actually made some shortcuts. And one of the shortcuts is that the server doesn't understand how the ships are oriented.
Yeah.
It's actually rotation is not understood by the server code, and thus rotation of a spaceship in EVE cannot affect the combat system, because otherwise you could cheat if it was just using the client. The server doesn't see it. And then there is another condition which is kind of unfortunate, is that doing line of sight occlusion by lasers or by projectiles or things like that is well, it's possible, but it's going to be very performance intensive by the player, by the server. And not having these two things actually is the reason why formations in EVE Online are actually not a thing. Like usually when you watch a fleet fight, the basic ball up into a ball against another ball.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately because from the server's perspective, if you look at the pure math, and it's all differential equations, how the physics works and all that, is that the correct solution, given the constraints, is to wage war like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as you introduce line of sight and occlusion being a thing, immediately you have to spread out the spaceships, otherwise you're shooting your friend to get over to the enemy. And immediately the context of the battle becomes relatable, because immediately you go into Napoleon level organizations of like, you have a certain type of ships in the front, other type of ships in the back, you need to protect your flank. And just by having line of sight occlusion, you immediately change the context of an EVE fleet fight from being this relatively uncomprehendable balls of ships against another ball of ship into something that has size and shape and texture, and the strategy go through the roof of managing that. And then once you have orientation, then you can start to make truly asymmetrical ship, kind of like the Abaddon is trying to be, but it actually isn't. Where, okay, the ship has a shape and it has a turning point, so if you attack its backside or its flank, it's weaker. And with something like this Ether War experiment, we're sort of nibbling at, could we deepen the physical simulation such that an EVE fleet fight could rise to the challenge of delivering something on this, not only from performance, but the reason why this has context and shape and you understand what's going on is because humans naturally understand these properties, but EVE just doesn't deliver them.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes. Anyone against this? No.
In favor?
Yeah.
I like always behind.
Yeah.
Well, we have another infrastructure project that we're working on. EVE Portal. We shipped EVE Portal 3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's been in a kind of a not the healthiest state. We worked with an external company on it, but what we have done now is we've actually moved Portal development in-house. So we have a small team working on EVE Portal, and we've basically kind of rebuilt it from the ground up. We're using a completely new backend that allows us to do all sorts of fun and interesting things relatively quickly. And we're also starting to experiment with direct connection to the monolith, or quote unquote direct connection to the monolith. So kind of easing the strain of easy, which will also allow us in the future to do all sorts of interesting things. I have a couple of screenshots. Like, we were not going to do any like major announcements here, but we decided to we felt this fitted well into, it's working.
I have it here.
So I just have like a couple of screenshots, and I think it's on feature parity with the old Portal app. We thought that was a good starting point. Except now we have skill management in the app, so you can actually manage your skills. And in the first version, we actually have a skill browser as well. And because of the awesome work done earlier this year, which is one of those kind of fix the stupid, where you can inject skills from afar, you can actually buy and inject skills from the app as well. So when I was on summer holiday this summer with my family, I spent all my ISK on skills that I did not know I needed, but they have cool names, so I had to get them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like this is like a tip of an iceberg. Like
Yeah.
it manifests like that, but this is the result of a lot of deep tech investment we have been doing. Not only is experimenting on the physics, 64-bit client, DirectX 12. We're now in the process of recompiling everything to Visual Studio 2019. So a lot of stuff going on. But some of this is in the sort of core infrastructure of the network transport of the game. The guys have been doing experiments with gRPC and things like that, which are actually potentially sort of low-hanging fruit ways to improve even the fleet fight situation in just its current way. But it also opens up for a pretty robust sort of bidirectional interactions with TQ without it being the Eve client. And while we're using the Portal app now, which obviously we have control over, we have to start somewhere where we're not exposing it too much. But this can lead to amazing things where there is the ability to offer bidirectional connection with TQ under ways where it won't just affect the performance overall. And this is the first step, obviously, and we will have to continue to build on this. But there are some serious capabilities which are being added underneath, which is going to be excited to kind of roll out in the years and decades to come.
Yeah, I mean, they're incredible. This has incredible potential, and this kind of, reading and writing directly into these fundamental systems. I mean, thousands of ideas. So little time.
But I'm very curious to see what the behavior here is going to be, whether all Eve players become like you and I. Like
buying skills
and how often I reorganize my skills queue now for no apparent purpose. It's just
because I remember when we first talked about this, I was like, I mean, this is something that you touch like every now and then you wait like 200 days and do it again. But nope, you actually do it like 3 times a day.
It's
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I got one. So now this is like just a sneak preview for us and everybody on the stream. So when can we expect it? More or less, like ballpark.
Next few weeks. We're just waiting to go through. We're just going through the approvals with Apple and Android. And
that's amazing.
Yeah,
thanks. Great.
We're actually going to run both apps in parallel to begin with. We're not going to swap out the old app just yet. Like this is still in, like we felt it was important to get this out earlier to you guys. Just, to hammer on it, to break it, to stress test it. So yeah, it's
and to maybe add to that, the reason why we're running them in parallel is that, well, believe it or not, this is actually written in Unreal. So this companion app is written in Unreal 4. So you can just imagine the capabilities we have underneath. Even though we're mostly mimicking the current Portal app with it, then obviously once we're on Unreal 4, we have amazing things we can do. But it also brings a higher platform requirement. So if you have an ancient phone, it might not work. That's why we're keeping the old one. We need to understand if there are too many players with old phones that cannot run this. And the best way to do it is just to run them in parallel. But once we're kind of up to speed on this, the companion app is written in Unreal 4. It uses bidirectional interface with TQ. You can just imagine what we can do from there.
Eve client on my mobile phone, yes?
So with this, it's possible. And if you look at the work we're doing on Echoes, then flying spaceships on a mobile phone is absolutely doable. But that's not the focus in the beginning. Now we're in the aspects of just building the foundations, and then we'll take sensible steps. But what I mean, we are crazy people.
Sometimes we get crazy ideas in a sauna late at night.
Wonder what sound.
Yeah.
I've got a question from the stream. They want to know if this app will eventually allow them to do their planetary interaction as well while they're on the road.
So it's technically possible with this.
Yeah. I mean, this connection with TQ opens up that possibility. Like it's definitely one of the favorite topics to talk about. But we definitely wanted to. The first thing that uses this type of connection with TQ, we wanted something that was relatively well contained and relatively straightforward, kind of simple in many ways. So we can like easily test it. We can easily troubleshoot all the nitty gritty. I mean, it looks innocent, but there is like a monument amount of work and code behind this.
Yeah, and it's also something that everyone engages with.
Yeah.
Planetary interaction, of which I do a lot of, is not engaged with by all EVE players. But I mean, you don't have to do a lot of planetary interaction to understand. It's basically a mini game inside the game. So whether it is inside the EVY or whether it's inside your Portal app written in Unreal 4, there could be ways on doing actually a much better job of that aspect of the game. But we have to prioritize the work where it has the most impact and benefits the most players.
Questions over here? I'll ask you a question then off the stream as well, if that's all right. Not regarding Portal though. This is going back to sort of the tech investment in general. A while back, CCP did a purge of long-term inactive players and freed up usernames and corporation names and things like that. Are there any plans to do that again soon?
So there is a part of the investment in like new players and early retention. Part of that work is to deal with the name situation. So there are a couple of things on the drawing table right now. Nothing that I'm willing to talk about right now, but you will hear from me very soon.
Yeah, but this element of like the namespace of EVE Online is one of the issues which causes issues over time. Like if you try to make a cool name in EVE now in 2019, it's virtually impossible. And it's like a extremely frustrating guessing game because the system doesn't really help you. You're like guessing, and then you just add some random stuff after just to have a unique name. So, and we've seen that in our data, the level of time it takes to make a name for yourself is way too long. Part of that is pollution of the namespace. Part of that is even the elements of like, okay, the fact that every name has to be globally unique is a challenge. Like, it's not how reality is. Two people can have the same name. Obviously, reputation, identity, these things are super important in EVE, and it's represented in your unique name. But finding a way to do that in a different way so that two people could have the same name without, if you were just to do that right now, it would be a bad thing. But there is an element in changing how identity is represented where that could be a way to fix the problem for good. But certainly the purge has been discussed, and frankly, it should just be done. The namespace is over polluted with like the 600,000 people last year that made a character, logged in. 90% are gone after 7 days, but their names remain.
Yeah, forever.
Any other questions over here?
Move to the next topic. So, just like the infrastructure, we're also building the CCP of the future. And we've been kind of we're actually moving houses. Some of you might have heard. We've been at Granda Garden now for 14 years, 15 years, 14 years. And just like the game, we're constantly reinventing ourselves and trying to push ourselves to the next decade.
Yeah, it's interesting how a building and where you are, like, does make a difference.
Yeah.
CCP was a very different company when we were in Klapparstígur than when we were in Grandagarður, and it will be a different company when we move to this building.
Yeah.
And it's already a different company just in the preparation.
Yeah. Here I have fan art of Grandagarður.
Yeah.
Get it quite well. So the new building is actually well underway. We have a couple of images to share. So this is the building last week when we went to visit.
Exactly.
This is it's a huge building. It's 17,000 square meters, and we will be occupying almost the whole of the third floor. And CCP will be we will only use a single floor in the building. So the whole company will be on the same floor, and we'll be using around 4,000 square meters or so. The building is situated on the university campus, and right behind there you can see the biology department. To the right, there is a big genetics company, and to our left is it's like a pharmaceutical research company.
Yes.
So a lot of brain power in very few square meters.
Yeah.
But the whole building will be kind of circled around software and hopefully a lot of gaming. And there will be like everything from small startups doing like office shares to other companies kind of in our scale.
Yeah, it's actually very exciting to see this come together. And for those of you who don't know, CCP Burger is actually an architect by training, so his talents have been abused somewhat in designing this building. I think Berger and I went to the mayor of Reykjavik, 7 years ago now? Yeah. And we went to him and he said, like, we need a plot for a new building for CCP at the university campus. And he actually delivered. It's a phenomenal plot we got, and we built this amazing house there. And it's very deliberately done on the premise of the university, because we have been experimenting on taking quote unquote kids from the university as employees and interns and all that. And just like we're now in the process of embracing new EVE players, we're in the process of embracing new CCPers. And it is amazing what the kids today can do, and what they have impacted in the game. Because often we live in the domain of, like, you have to play EVE Online for 10 years, you have to learn Python, stackless Python, all our endless legacy to be able to contribute something. But we've just seen, I mean, what has been done is amazing. Like, all the project discovery work was basically done by interns. And some of that, like the project discovery UI, the UX of project discovery is better than many aspects of EVE Online. And it's also like finding life on maybe not life yet, but just finding planets first.
Finding planets first, then life.
So I think we will have a very interesting dynamic of doing much more collaboration with the university. And it's even the house is specifically built for that. We're sharing space with the university inside the building. So it's going to be very exciting for CCP. We're kind of outside. If you come to Reykjavik, we're kind of in the outskirts. We're kind of outside of the main sort of area of Reykjavik, even though we're close. And now we're front and center where all the smartest people in Iceland are located. And there's the auditorium. It's like, we're actually going to be using this at the end of the month. We're doing a kickoff event inside the company. We're going to have it there in the building as it is now. It's just concrete floors. It's going to be exciting.
It's going to be really exciting. I mean, the two of us are going to talk and
we're going to say something.
We're going to say something. So I hope people bring pillows.
Yes. It's going to take long. You think? What have it been now? 2 hours?
The building is it's a really interesting project and really exciting project, and we've kind of we are kind of rethinking a lot on kind of how we set up and how we kind of interact with each other and how we work with each other. I mean, we're taking very interesting and active steps away from the bad myth of open floor plan. So each team is going to be kind of, they're not going to be closed off, but they're kind of, you know, they will have their own space with like a seating area, and it creates like a really interesting flow and dynamics.
It's very interesting, these studies which have been coming out late of the myth of the open floor.
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of these counterintuitive things of like, you think open floor with increased communication. Every study into the matter shows that it decreases communication.
Yeah.
And people communicate more if they're in offices rather than open floor, which is kind of like we're studying in online, and we find it's not about like people being nasty to each other. It's actually the reverse. It's people being super nice to each other.
Yeah.
Even though the anecdotal myth is different, and it's very much similar with his open floor plans, and we've kind of seen it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually been doing some user testing on the new floor plan at the CCP offices. Yeah. So earlier this year, we got contractors to come and change 2 of our floors and build few prototypes of the workspaces as we're going to have them in the new building. And it was actually quite useful because we could just cross one off right off the bat because it
didn't work.
Yeah. So yeah, we're learning every day.
It's kind of like making EVE Online, making a house.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah, I often say like managing EVE Online is like running a city. It's it's various aspects. It's not like a country; it's more like a city. Actually.
No, it's way more like a city, definitely. Yeah. Different people, different needs.
A lot of janitorial work.
Some questions?
Right, so I'm just going to ask a couple of quick questions from the stream. First of all, the EVE Online monument, is that going to stay where it is near the old CCP headquarters?
It's going to move with us.
It's going to be relocated?
Yeah.
Cool. With the existing names, are you going to, any plans to update the nameplates on it?
As of right now, we're thinking about just taking it as is.
Right.
It's a really interesting question, and it touches my love of art, kind of, and documentation. I think the monument is a really beautiful snapshot of a moment in time, and I think there is, so in many ways, I think it's quite beautiful that we don't alter the names, because there are names there of players who are still playing. There are names of players that have left the game, and there are even names of players that have passed away. So it's a really poetic moment when you see, you know, when it's fantastic when you see players look for their names, but it's even more poetic when you see people look for their friends or for, you know, people who passed away. So yeah, I get very sentimental when I think about this.
Yeah, but it's definitely moving.
Yeah.
But I think, to Berger's point, it's a moment in time. I mean, at some point the game is 20 years old. We should maybe do something different then, memorialize that in some new way. Yeah. Like build a monument on the moon, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe that's for 30 years.
Yeah. Mars, maybe.
Mars for 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we definitely there's definitely going to be some, you know, we'll have plenty of EVE Online in the new building.
And in keeping with that theme, have you guys decided to have some sort of a cool statue in the lobby of the new building, something EVE flavored?
Well, there's going to be a lot of EVE flavor.
There's going to be a lot of EVE flavor
in the building, and we're going to be a lot more, I don't know, probably the word is proud about aspects of EVE. And of course the meeting rooms are going to be named by the EVE community, which
GM Week has already kicked that off.
It's going to be a lot of Mac Boatface suggestions, I think.
Meeting room.
Meeting room, yes.
No, I think like one of the things that last 18 months at CCP have been very interesting, and a lot of like things have changed, and a lot of changes, a lot of shifts. But one of the more positive shifts that has happened is that the company is way more focused on EVE Online. and we're way more like we spent way less time kind of thinking about all the other things, and EVE Online has definitely kind of, you know, it's kind of risen to the very forefront of everyone's mind, and kind of the level of pride in the company has risen a lot over the last 18 months, I think, and with the move to the new building and hopefully some interesting things that
so there is going to be a lot more expression of EVE Online in this building than in the other building. Of course, we just have more stuff to play with now rather than when we moved. We moved in 2005. We were still just busy keeping the servers alive back then.
Yeah. So, next topic. Are you ready, Hellmar?
Yeah, what's next?
It's a big one. What about the economy? All those burgers in station, and
You're CCP Burger.
I'm CCP Burger.
And we're cooking burgers.
I'm cooking burgers tonight,
Yeah, this is a theme, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about the economy? Well, it certainly was out of control, I have to say. When we have been, the problems have been accumulating. It's this elements with economy. They move in. Well, they can move fast, but mostly they move and escalate. And we have been having this gradual escalating problem of the faucets and sinks, as we call them. And for maybe people that are not deep in, game economy, this is mostly used in game economies. So the way the EVE Online economy works is that money is introduced into the game through player activity. That is called a faucet, and then it's taken out of the game through a sink. And a sink is every time you pay the money into the NPC economy, because actually players trading with each other is not a sink. That is just slushing the money around in the same bathtub. It neither generates new money or destroys money, but every time the NPC economy gives you money, for example, killing a pirate in a bounty, or the NPC economy takes away money, for example, with market taxes, then the money leaves. And because there has been the condition where NPC bounties in particular have been massively, almost, I would use the word exploited, but it's not really an exploit because nobody has broken any rules, but it's just, frankly, we have not done a good enough job of managing this aspect. And we have taken some drastic actions which have put the situation in a lot better place. And like was asked earlier on the stream, the risk, the rewards. What about the rewards? Now we're actually, for the first time in a long time, where we can start to introduce new rewards into the equation, because we've got in the current situation more under control. I wouldn't say it's perfectly where I would want to have it. And you can see this expressed. It's actually, I love seeing dialogue about Plex prices. And people are saying Plex prices are rising and falling, which is one way to look at it. I always look at it differently, is that the price of the ISK is rising and falling. And it's actually interesting. The price of ISK in EVE Online represents the value of work in the economy. Because if ISK is hard to come by, then the work is hard. If the price of the ISK is high, then the work is easy. So when we see the ISK strengthening, like it's doing now, against the Plex, it's because the value of work in the EVE economy, and work is represented by, for example, killing pirates. Concord is paying you to do it. It's literally, Concord is paying people to kill pirates, or getting bounties. That's why it's a form of work. So seeing that is an example of, like, now we have gotten this to a better situation where the money is worth something, because it's been worth very little for too long.
And I mean, we're at a point now where this scene is actually a relatively common scene that we're seeing on the screen now, where Titans are just disposable.
Exactly, the Titans. The Titans represent so many examples of era of CCP or era of EVE Online, probably more than CCP, needs to end. They are a construct that matches no of the design patterns we should follow in making EVE Online stuff. The fact that you can store a Titan, which is the size of a city, in perfect asset safety forever, and it's never at risk, and the fact that it doesn't have any operating expensive, it's a thing we need to address. Yeah, I'm sure there are
Yeah,
questions
we're
about this.
just contemplating this. It's
Yeah.
Just exploded.
Yes.
How do you think the monthly economic report for July is going to look?
it's going to look quite interesting. The initial numbers that I've seen are definitely very interesting. I'm also really excited about. I'm very excited about seeing the August numbers actually, because a lot of the change. There were so many rapid changes in July, and August has been more kind of in little more balance.
Yeah.
But it's these are numbers that we follow very, very closely.
Yep. I mean, we don't have to guess. We know what it's going to look like. We see the early KPIs. And it just represents that the situation with the bounties and the situation with the money supply is in a much healthier state right now than it was. Some of it is knee-jerk responses. So with these things, you have to look at a longer timeline to really know what's going on. We have made pretty drastic changes to whatever the meta of EVE Online, if you call it that, and what emerges out of that is some of the initial changes are pretty predictable, but the long-term aspects are not as predictable as any armchair economists in any economy will know. You cannot, and us living in Iceland know this the best. Like there were so many armchair economists that explained the economic collapse of Iceland after the fact. And there were also many economists which predicted it before the fact, because if you predict rain for 10 years, it's going to rain at some point. And it's just like from living through experiments like the Icelandic economic meltdown, you start to learn of like trying to Asperger your way out of all economy problems. It's just like, it's not the way to do it.
Yeah, but at the same time, like it's definitely a rabbit hole, you know, we find ourselves often in, like debating the economy, and oftentimes we forget that, you know, being an economist is a little bit like being a weatherman. You're just, you know, you're trying to learn from previous pattern of what might possibly happen tomorrow.
Yes, we debated way too much and do too little.
And it's amazing when you actually just do something and learn from it.
Exactly, and not that we're just doing something. I mean, there is a method to what we're doing.
It's definitely a method, and
but there are no guaranteed outcomes in this.
No.
And I will just add, for the benefit of the people on the stream, that the July MER will be out soon. All right, so here's some questions from the audience.
Hi. Do you have actually you have like tons of data that you are gathering for the EVE economy, but do you have any data that with the EVE economy and the real life economy, do you have any data that suppose like that? Do they fluctuate as same?
So we don't look at fluctuations in the real economy to the EVE economy that much, because fluctuations in the real economy are so diverse because it's a global game. So you have to isolate them out on a very local level. We do see aspects when there are drastic changes in countries' economy. For example, in 2008, we saw a very distinct increase in player activity throughout the world when there was the worldwide economic crisis. And I think all entertainment products saw similar effects. Because people, they went less out of their house, they drove their car less, they traveled less, and they ended up playing more EVE Online, for example. We've seen when currency changes are in the world, for example, it's very notable in Russia, the behavior of Russian players and their purchases of Plex based on the strength or weakness of the ruble. And the ruble has been going up and down quite a bit in the last decade. So we see those things correlate. We have run experiments in the EVE economy to validate economic theory from reality, because we have more data than reality actually. So like pricing bubbles, how they trend, how they form, those kind of things. We have done studies with university to validate kind of us out of the imposter syndrome of, is it a real economy? We spent the first 10 years wondering, I think it's an economy, but it's what you learn when you work with economists is that real economies are not real economies. Like all country economies are statistical approximations of human behavior. No central bank in the world has the level of perfect data we have. We have way better data than a central bank managing a country economy. And believe me, during the economic collapse, obviously was running a company in Iceland, and when your banking system goes away, you have to learn a lot about like how the banking system worked to run a company. So in the panic moments of 2008, when the banking system of Iceland disappeared, I was literally finding ways to pay our employees in China out of our bank account in the Netherlands, where Global Collect has their money, through a database table at JP Morgan, which is one of the 12 databases that stores all the American dollars. When you look at that and see their tech infrastructure, it's like, oh my God, guys, I could run the whole world on the infrastructure and I would do a better job. Anyway, backtracking a little bit. For the first 10 years, we were figuring out, is it a real economy, la 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 la. All economies are fake. Ours is more real than anyone else because we have better data. And we have validated with like PhD economists of the WASU that most economic theory you can test in reality are valid in EVE Online.
You hinted on the Titans that there might be some more expenses coming. How about property in general? Like now you can, like in market, you can store however lots of stuff, so kind of getting expenses.
So this element of NPC stations having infinite guarantee on all assets is a cop-out. We spent a lot of time designing a system where inventory space would be a thing in EVE. Even to the point, because once you start to constrain inventory, it's actually putting things on the market and storing them on the market. It becomes an exploit of inventory management system. And we just didn't have time to solve a good UX for inventory management and the exploit of storing things in orders on the market. So we just didn't. And now as a consequence, we have this expectation, tradition of assets being safe. And it's just, it breaks the pattern of, it's not possible to do in the real world in any way. Nobody in the real world can guarantee an asset against everything. Like Fort Knox is not guaranteed against an alien invasion or a meteor hitting it. Like the Icelandic economy cannot guarantee, well, pretty much anything based on our experience. So this element is a problem. It doesn't adhere to the few things I would call principles of EVE design, of like you should not make things that cannot be done. And if you think of an NPC station in a futuristic sci-fi world, it would not be safe. It is there, you can exploit it. Like, unless we make some sci-fi about like it's stored in the quantum realm, then it just, it isn't correct. How to address it is not easy.
No.
and it needs to be done with care because we've built up an expectation over 16 years that the assets are safe. But first, we need to stop perpetuating the problem by introducing new design, which follow that bad pattern. And we need to unwind some of the elements in the game, like asset safety and NPC stations in general, such that everything is potentially at risk. But obviously, you also need control to control that risk. Whether we should introduce like OpEx as a way to manage that control is challenging because it can also be tedious. Like if you're paying rent all the time, it's also a game. So so you have to maybe come up with better conceits that rather than just there's a bill for everything. But I think in principle we need to A, stop perpetuating, and B, start to wind down some of the issues that have built up over time.
Yeah, I mean, loss has meaning.
Loss has
And-
meaning,
And,
and it should have the ability to occur.
and yeah, we have situations where we have a lot of situations right now where loss has absolutely no meaning at all.
Yep.
And that kind of
Exactly. That
unhealthy
is a
steps
serious.
away from unhealthy steps away from kind of the core elements and the core rules of the universe.
Yeah.
So
More questions? I'm sure people want to ask more about this. But
I got one more. As you hinted on the Titans being able to dock and just sit there safe and sound, are you guys thinking in forms of changes that they can no longer dock, for example?
So it's hard to go into specifics because I'm a CEO and Berger is a creative director. And we are responsible for vision and strategy for this game. And we can say things like this. This is a problem, we want to address it.
Yeah.
As soon as you get into nitty-gritty specifics, well, we have people that are experts at that and they need to be able to do their jobs once we have contextualized it like that. But we can tell to you, high level, we view this as a problem, and we view it as a problem because it's a problem with the principles of how we want to manage the game.
yeah,
And we need to do something about that. I know there's always call out and people go into specifics because there are so many ideas around and some of them are pretty good. But at this point in time here in this Finnish house, I think like confirming anything like asset safety is gone. This is not a soundbite. Exactly. It's just too detailed. We are, for all our law for shooting from the hip, we actually don't do that, except sometimes.
there's nothing 100% in the world.
There's nothing 100% in the world, yes. Yeah.
Which leads us to
Yes.
that quote that you came up with a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. It's taken off.
It's taken off.
Seemed to be fitting.
Yeah. It's been interesting couple of months in Eve.
Yes, it has.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen as much dialogue around the game. Or never, that's not true. I've seen a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
But it certainly is more passionate
It's very passionate.
what it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels like make it harder for the veterans, easier for the new players. It's definitely hitting that.
Yes. Yeah, I think, like you're saying, Berger, is that the strategy around EVE Online on a very high level and more like goals rather than strategy per se is to increase challenges for veteran players of EVE Online and to decrease the challenges of new players of EVE Online. If you look at the past 5 years, we have done the reverse. We have actually increased the challenges for new players because the sprawling complexity increase of the game. And we have been decreasing challenges for veteran players because we have given so many tools and so much access and control to players to organize the underlying chaos in the world, which is now at an extent where it's gone. So while the chaos era, which is inspired by this great book we both read, that the three-body problem, is a good moniker for it. It actually is quite good. Then chaos is not the point per se. Chaos is more a tool to sort of topple up the stagnation that has been building up over the, I don't know how long it is, 5-10 years where we start to count. So while it's currently done with these tracer bullets, manual activity and all that, ideally we will empower the universe with more ability to organize its own chaos. But right now Eve just needs help. Eve does not have the ability to reinvent itself. And we have not introduced into the economy tools for players to actually do innovation, because the real world does this through tech disruption.
Yeah.
Like established old companies in the reality as disrupted by startups through tech innovation. There is some innovation in EVE through, I mean, people have done extremely innovative things with doctrines, with tactics, with strategies, etc. But it is not possible currently in EVE Online to invent a new thing that fundamentally gives you an edge over established entities.
Yeah.
So we have to help EVE Online, and some of it is the activities we've been doing, which are orchestrated by us. But behind the scenes, we will be building up the ability for EVE to reinvent itself. Because with AI, procedural generation, etc., there are so many tools now to do that, which weren't available when the conditions were set.
And we're also seeing that in many ways that the game is taking control of itself. And, you know, it is...
Yes,
It is like, you know, in some cases, like it is not CCP, it is EVE Online. And EVE Online is its own reality. It's you know...
It's interesting you say it. Like I've obviously been quote unquote living with EVE Online for 2 decades, and to me it's almost like a second wife. Somebody in the audience says. No, it's more a mistress than a wife, like dominatrix, probably more. But it is like living with a living entity. It seems to have a will on its own.
Yeah. And maybe it's like, just like, you know, a real human being. It's, you know, we're coming up on the 17th birthday.
Yeah.
When you're 17, like, you're not as, you know, silly as you were when you're 16 or
exactly, and not
12,
as,
you know.
Yeah, and not as compliant with
with
the rules of the household.
Yeah. So we're just maybe going through like kind of the late teen years now.
Yeah.
Trying to get her to like let us know if she's staying for dinner or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please call home. No.
I'm sure we have questions.
So obviously the blackout had a profound effect on nullsec. Have you got anything in the pipeline chaos-wise for wormholes or low-sec space?
Well, do we have anything planned? I think we have stagnation issues across the board. I think, for example, when it comes to wormholes, there are now established routine, process-oriented, repetitive ways to manage the complexity of wormholes, like rolling down, statics, all these things. They are too tedious, pedantic. There's too much control through that. So
yeah, I mean, it's almost become like they've almost kind of hit kind of a motoring skill in a way. You're not. Yeah. It's active, but it's still like it's a routine.
And if you look at some of the community tools that are created, like it is gone into a place where the sense of control to an unpredictable outcome needs to be addressed. And I think the ease of closing down holes is something that needs to be taken a look at. And incidentally, there apparently are a lot of wormhole players in Finland. I wonder why. It's a very Finnish thing to do, I guess. And we have gotten some inspiring conversation on what could be done.
Yeah.
But I think wormholes like null space, like low sec, all need attention. I think high sec needs a different attention.
Yep.
That is more about embracing new players, more about something like we're doing with War Declaration, protecting people from bullies in their first years, having unregulated bullying going on in our playground is just not the plan. I mean, it's fine for it to happen in certain places, but not in the neonatal care of new players. Like infant mortality is an issue in EVE and it needs addressing.
One question. Now that we've been having fun with the Chaos era, and especially the Blackout, might we actually see some more uneven distribution of resources in our security space in the future?
Yeah.
That's a great question and a great topic.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to answer the question from a vision and principle standpoint. It is too stagnant. It should not be stagnant.
It's too predictable.
Yeah, and Eve was made with an algorithm that procedurally generated the world. Eve does not have the ability to procedurally regenerate itself. Eve needs that ability. If Eve had that ability, it would not have the resource distribution stagnant. So finding ways to equip Eve Online with the ability to regenerate itself in unpredictable ways which are even unpredictable to us, is something that need to occur. It is not trivial to do, but that is where we should take it.
Yeah, but I mean, this is more from a vision and strategy point of view, and this is where the conversation has been for quite some time now, and we're definitely we keep the conversation live, definitely. So one more question.
Yeah, so this is not so much maybe about the question, or maybe more of the observation of the economy and the chaos era especially. How I see it, I don't know if you see it the same way, it's like you're like the trust busters of the early 1900s. You're trying to make sure that no trust, no monopoly will be dominant in the game. Am I on the right tracks here, or is this something that throwing you some new bones?
I wouldn't necessarily go there. Maybe I think.
Well, I mean, you use trust, and it's good to build on that. So trust should be a commodity.
Trust,
antitrust. I realize we're like breaking monopoly circles. It's actually, I would more take the trust, just the word you said, is that when you give people tools to abstract away trust, then trust is no longer a commodity, and thus betrayal is not a severe thing. So one of the elements we debated to no end before making EVE Online was how quickly does the game reach a stable position where somebody has won because they're able to control more than half of the world. So where we would have an actual antitrust situation. How quickly will that happen? Our theory was always such an entity will always be torn down from the inside. Because if you make trust a commodity, there is only so many people you can trust. You need hierarchies, systems, processes, structure, control to increase the trust. And those are all elements to engineer trust out of the equation. And man has invented many ways to do that. Companies, nations, law and order, notion of possession, etc. are ways to engineer trust out of the way. But Eve has gone too far, so the leverageability of trust between people needs to be increased. And some of that is taken away control mechanisms, which are inside the game. Obviously, a lot of extremely impressive EVE organizations have a lot of trust engineering elements outside of the game, which we, of course, cannot interfere with per se. But I think one of the elements coming out of the blackout is how much ESI is used for OPSEC, and that was not the original intent. So when like Zkill and Dotlan joined the blackout, I hear from many EVE players that was a bigger issue than the actual blackout. So I would say, rather than going in the 1900 styles, manually breaking up monopolies, like you said, I would rather find ways to increase the value of trust over time, such that people have the ability to tear down large organizations from the inside.
I think with that question, we're going to do a 5-minute break, use the restroom, and then come back and go through some other interesting topics. Welcome back. I just heard we've been talking for like 2.5 hours. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, time flies when you're in Finland.
Yeah, time flies when you're in Finland. Yeah, definitely. So, next topic. Inspiration from EVE, past, present, and future. EVE is a really interesting beast, and we were talking about this earlier. That in the 16 years that since the game came out, like we're talking about kind of how technology has evolved, but it's also just kind of how like this reality, not EVE reality, has changed a lot throughout the last 16 years, or actually like 20 years that CCP has been around.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're still kind of running on a kind of a 20-year-old paradigm when it comes to sci-fi, and even sci-fi has kind of taken massive leaps.
Absolutely. It's like they were announcing the Matrix 4. Was it yesterday or?
Yeah, a couple of weeks, or few days ago.
Yeah, it was actually interesting with that because I remember this one time when we were making EVE, we all went to see the Matrix together, which is like the Matrix is it's such a the way they do the sci-fi is so like it's very good for a movie because the movie is now timeless because the style is so crisp and clear that it is almost timeless, and it's kind of almost like, I don't know, sort of like a steampunk version of sci-fi. Not that it is steampunk per se, but it's like it's a very particular sort of 80s green terminal font. Nokia click phones, which actually weren't click phones, but they made it in the movie. All the leather and spandex, like it's a very sort of crisp style. And EVE, like even the beginning, like the TVs at jump gates were like actual like CRT TVs with interlace effects. And that particular interlace effect and we actually didn't have green font, but we had this particular type of font, which is very close to the terminal font. And very close to Verdana, which we actually used in a VRML browser we did in the 95. And now we like even online, because it's a living, breathing sci-fi world, some of the stuff is getting a little dated.
But we are constantly evolving and updating. It was great before Amsterdam. I actually went through and I did like a 10-minute retrospective of the UI in game, because we were kind of, you know, we're looking at this new dark style UI that the agency has, and now we're looking at new features to kind of adopt the style. And it was actually amazing going through kind of the history of the UI in game, and you know, I went as far back as, you know, 99 and 2000, like way before we shipped the game, and you can see like that kind of in 99 there's a very strong link to Matrix. There's like you can see like before you guys went to see the movie and the day after you went to see the movie. It's like rip the carpet from underneath.
Yeah, it's also shared inspiration. Like a lot of what inspired the Matrix, the same things inspired Team Online.
Absolutely.
But it's actually, you mentioned the UI, but it's what I've actually been quite happy about what you guys have been doing, and it's like the infographic on the Stargates, where you're showing something which is obviously not a physical thing. It looks like an AR infographic inside the world. And when you think about it, okay, we're in a pod, we have a camera drone, it's feeding imagery into our brain. It would be so easy for that drone to interlace additional data. Of course you would do it. If we're going to have AR in our reality with glasses on to see extra information, see your LinkedIn profile so I can remember your name. Hopefully that happens someday. Not your name though. I think I've got it.
Thank you. You know my name.
Say my name. Anyway, I like that. That seems like futuristic. That we've taken the CRT monitors and now we have this kind of cool AR style.
And we've kind of evolved.
That feels future forward. And I think we should do more of that with like some of the version of like some of the like ship skins. If you were a Galante like industrial designer working for making a ship skin for a ship, you would be way more expressive than what we offer currently. And way more breaking the mold. I wish we would like push that a little more to what like...
Yeah, we've actually been developing a lot of tech around things like that. We did, I mean, there have been a couple of skins that have actually had like banners hanging down. We had a skin that came out a couple of weeks ago where it actually changes colors when you go into warp and stuff like that. So they're taking in the state of the state of the world, state of,
Yeah.
of your actions. And it's all kind of done with this idea of creating more reasons to look at space.
Yeah.
Like there is a benefit and a reason to like move your eyes from the lists and the spreadsheets
Yeah.
and into the space scene and give it valuable information and give it a reason to be a participant in the scene.
Yeah.
And as a benefit, the world becomes way more alive because of it. And
Yeah.
you just it becomes a much more of you get a much stronger sense of the living, breathing universe it is, because it is a very vibrant space. Like Eve is constantly, like the meta is constantly evolving with corporations being formed and disbanded and people fighting over stuff and blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the game kind of doesn't echo it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't kind of tell you, hey, 5 hours ago this space was in like shambles.
Yeah.
There's nothing going on here.
I actually felt that quite a bit when I saw the new Stargates.
Yeah.
It was like, okay. I'm
Yeah.
now looking at the Stargates. I'm excited to see what this is, and it's like thinking, what is it? Is it AR? Is it this? Like,
It's also giving you information what's happening on the
Yeah.
other side, kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. I wish we could do something with the characters like this, like more. I don't know. Having a character in space is maybe, but maybe not. Like maybe there's a way.
Yeah.
Some inspired sci-fi concept.
Yeah. And also, I mean, also just underlining the fact that you are not the spaceship.
Yeah.
You are the capsuleer flying that spaceship, and you should care about your clone.
Yeah.
You should not care about the spaceship. That's, that blows up and you build a new one, and we go and blow up bigger things.
Yeah.
This is actually one of my favorite pictures in fan-made picture I've ever. It's the Corp Cube.
Death is a serious matter.
That is a serious matter. Yeah, I was asked to do a presentation for the fine art department at the art school.
Yes.
And they wanted
Daniel
to.
Hurst.
Yeah, it's like a Damien Hirst almost. And they wanted to like, they wanted me to like talk about art in Eve, and I totally misunderstood. I thought they were talking about actual art, people making art in Eve and sculptures, and like I think this is one of the best examples of a beautiful sculpture in Eve. But they wanted to know about concept art and 3D art and stuff like that. So
Boring stuff.
boring stuff. So I had a deep presentation about all, because there is so much freedom. There is so much. You can carve your own space, and you can create your own path. And when you have the core functionalities and everything that supports that, and then all the jobs that support the support jobs, and then you get a layer out and you start to get like artists, because people in the world want entertainment and they want to like go and see an art show. So I've always seen this as it's actually one of like my pride moments in Eve, because it shows that it's so real that we have
So much expression.
yeah
So much expression.
and yeah it creates so many emotions.
Do you want to do some questions?
Yeah.
All right. So you've been talking about Eve, and you've been talking about movies and things that inspired it. Is there still, this is from the stream, is there still an ambition to get a version of Eve on either the big or the small screen?
It's certainly an ambition to do that. It just it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, I know.
I've found out, and it needs serious dedication of resources and time. And it's just something that we have been dabbling in, and our dabbling is not going very far. I think Game of Cards took 7 years to get done. So, it just takes a longer time. But there is the ambition. It's not a huge priority right now. We're more focusing on the game and addressing elements in the game we want to address, and I've been talking now for almost 3 hours about. So that is a much bigger priority, but I think there's a lot about Eve as a narrative fiction, as a world, as many of these things that should be explored in other forms of media. We've obviously done books, comics, things like that, but getting it as a TV series, I think, is the best format.
Yep.
Like a movie would be, it's like Game of Thrones. It's hard to make a movie about Game of Thrones, and it's hard to make a movie about Eve, but you could do a 90 season
I mean, we have
exploration of.
we have endless stories, and
Yeah.
you know, it's definitely something we would all love to see.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but we have unfortunately made little progress, and it's mainly because it is something we're dabbling in, and it's not going to get big priority. The priority is on the elements we've been talking about here.
You were talking about getting like the UI more up to date, getting more data, a little bit AR like. For streamers, is there a possibility to tone that information down as well? Is that something that you have been thinking about? Because it, like, the information is nice if you're just playing on by yourself, but while streaming, sometimes it can give you interesting interactions and sometimes unwanted interactions.
Well, I've never thought about that.
no, I haven't really thought about it, but
Uh-huh.
it may make sense when you say it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think overall this element of streamers and streaming in Eve is something we fantasized about
yeah.
maybe a decade ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we tried to make happen at some point.
Yep.
And it just didn't happen, and we thought maybe the game can't be streamed.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, people have found ways to stream it and make it super engaging.
Yep.
And that is, like many things in EVE Online, a player invention, that you can stream the game so that it is interesting to EVE players and even non-EVE players.
Yep.
So I think it's something we need to pay more attention to. There are very interesting tools actually which come online, which we put in place for Portal about the bidirectional interaction. And there are now all the streaming platforms are doing interaction from audience to streamer. And now that we have the other way, it is we have the ability of orchestrating an interaction, like if you imagine in Hunger Games, when patrons are sending gifts into the Hunger Game mats. We do have the ability to do that in EVE, like the technical foundations are in place. And if you start to maybe brainstorm, what could it be like if you're a streamer, like you'd have 1 million camera drones around you, like based on how many people are watching you. So you see a spaceship with a lot of drones, okay, it's a streamer. A lot of streamers operate on just people giving them stuff to sustain, like all the spaceships you lose and things like that. Maybe there's a way to create some economy around that, because we do have the ability. We've already integrated with Twitch Prime through our SSO infrastructure. So getting a whole loop going on would be possible. And I think we probably need to talk more with streamers of like, what is your wildest idea? What's the most crazy thing you could think of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Stream fleet is laughing. Okay.
I should have
Rewind. Yeah, but I mean, it's. I watch a lot of streams. Like oftentimes, you know, I don't have the time to play the game as much as I want to, and also kind of having a recognizable voice is not the most ideal thing when you're playing EVE with others.
Yeah.
The excuse that I'm a girl or that I have a sore throat only goes so far until people like start to call me out on bullshit and I move corporations. So I actually watch a lot of streams just to kind of keep with the meta, keep with what's going on and the dialogue. And I think, it's definitely like you streamers have definitely kind of proven us wrong, because the sentiment was very much that like,
nobody wants to watch this.
Nobody wants to watch this,
Yeah.
but there's great entertainment there, and great streamers.
Absolutely, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So good point.
So I'm a bit taken aback while we're talking about streaming and stuff. I'm great. My question was actually going to be about, you said about technology and skins and identity for players. With the you mentioned the skins, like you have the permaband skin that with the hologram of permaband on the side, the drapes and things like that. Is that could that be a forerunner to having corps and alliances on skins? Because if you were look at any air force in the world, in the real world, they all have a symbol on it that says we are this squadron, we are this country. In New Eden, shouldn't that be a thing? Shouldn't you be able to fly the flag of your alliance or your corp on your ship? Because you sure as hell would paint it on there.
Yeah, it should definitely be a thing in New Eden. It's yeah, we've kind of dabbled in it. We've done a few prototypes in the past of this. Some of them have accidentally leaked in promotional material, so people can like dig now through old press releases. And it's something we've explored a lot. One of the issues that we found with alliance logos or corporation logos on ships is that they become very small and very hard to see. So we also played with like different ideas. Like, is it is it more like kind of classic racing where you're flying your colors, almost like kind of classic Monte Carlo races where each company had its own race stripes? Like, is that something we could do? We've looked at going more down like a banner route where you have specific banner ships and more kind of a classic Napoleon era type identity. But the idea of kind of displaying your identity and showing pride in who you are and where you come from is yeah, it's very near and dear to my heart. But it's something that we want to do. When we do it, we want to do it well. This is one of those features that cannot be half-assed. We need to be like 100% on it.
As an addition to that, you said about streamers coming up with stupid ideas, and the skin idea at the same time. Could there be a streamer skin, so people can see that's a streamer, which would say, "Yep, I'm engageable. Come and have a go," or something like that. You said about the million drones and things. Yeah. And if Rain is listening, I'll ask for you, but I hate the idea. Cat ears and Hello Kitty skins, and more pink skins for Moses. So yeah, sorry.
A little bit on that. So we have had like draconian art direction in Even Line for 20 years.
Not anymore. But
yeah, not anymore. And that has achieved an amazing amount of consistency in the world, which we now have in place, and now we can build on that. Yep. So I am very happy that now we're exploring a lot of these taboos, like peak colors and cat ears. Yep. It's because it's a futuristic sci-fi world, and it has elements like Galente. And Galente are more Fifth Element than Fifth Element. Like they are, like it's yeah, exactly. It's a disco populist, like post-humanistic culture. Yeah. And they would just not be green Caldari, which they are now. It's just what they are. They're green Caldari with less angles. And there's just like, if there were cat ears, they would be Galente. So there's just this allowing that freedom on top of the foundations were put in place, where it doesn't necessarily like take over everything, but the presence of that on top of all the other consistency makes everything a little more dynamic.
Yeah, and I think we could even go. We should even think further. I mean, it's 21,000 years in the future. Yeah. Why do we have males and females?
Yes, exactly.
Like, why?
Yeah. I actually was reading, interesting you say this, I was reading some article that there are 5 distinct gender identities which trace back to like even like the Indians in America. They had this 5, I don't remember all 5. So like 2 seems like if 2,000 years people had invented 5, then 21,000 years there should be more than 5.
Yeah, definitely.
And we just have 2.
Yeah.
Seems weird.
Seems weird.
Yeah.
Let's change it.
Yes.
I have a question from the stream on the topic of inspiration from Eve. Can either of you guys think of any examples where you've heard in the gaming industry or in popular media more broadly where Eve has been the source of inspiration for something that someone has made?
Every single day. Like it's like I get inspired from a lot of games and colleagues elsewhere. Like I hear from it's I ping I see an awesome system, I ping, I figure out if I know someone in the company, ping them like, hey, super cool, get a ping back and like, oh, we based it out of this system here, and I'm like, oh, that system is based out of this system there, and then you kind of you go a big merry-go-round and end up with the same game. So
yeah, I think the most like the example that comes to my mind is Dean Hall on DayZ. Dean Hall has been extremely vocal and clear about the fact that DayZ is inspired by EVE Online, and even the games he has subsequently been dabbling in use a lot of reference material from EVE. And he even came to Iceland in 2015 at a conference called Slush Play. If you Google Dean Hall, Slush Play, Iceland, something, you will see a talk he did. It's probably 15-minute long, and it's like a love letter to EVE Online. I would encourage anyone interested about EVE Online to listen to Dean, how he talks about it. And he is one of the person that in the world just that understands EVE the most. The way he speaks about it is extremely inspiring. To see that he was able to write this much about the elements that go into creating it just from watching it, well, playing it also. But I didn't know him until after he did that talk. So,
question from the audience about the EVE Online UI. It's been like a legend. You can like configure it like so much, but it still can be quite of a overwhelming experience, especially for new players. Have you had any ideas, discussions, or maybe plans, or maybe doing a total revamp for the UI at some point?
So the agency UI is definitely a first step in that direction, and like with Ether Wars and the new portal, like we decided to get it out as soon as we could, rather than kind of lock ourselves in a room for 18 months and then do a complete revamp. We decided to roll out a single feature with this updated UI. And now we've learned a lot. We learned about, we made some mistakes, and, we thought some things were fantastic, but they proved out to be pure and simple silly. And we also found out that, like, in some cases we didn't push far enough. And even if it's visually it's a relatively big change, but from a UX point of view and kind of interaction point of view, it's actually a massive change. And it's actually kind of forced us into kind of looking the UX, the user experience beast in the eye, and kind of we're dealing with a lot of kind of 4:45 in the morning decisions from 15, 20 years ago.
yeah, it's actually like it was made by 12 engineers in 3 years, and we had to write everything: the 3D engine, exporters for my invent a threading model, clustering algorithm, a billion database tables. Like it's Jesus Christ, how was this even possible? I was there. It still doesn't really compute. And 2 of the programmers I had to teach to program while we were doing it. Like Frikki at some point just comes to me and, Hellmar, teach me how to program. I can't wait anymore. Like it was a UI designer. And he actually single-handedly programmed most of the UI, and he learned it while he was doing it.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah.
And because it's there and it serves a purpose, it kind of works. We have not put enough priority on it.
No.
But there are some epic things there, like the overview, which is like the cheap way to discover what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Is a one-dimensional list ordered by mostly distance, which is another element that makes the game one-dimensional where it is three-dimensional.
Yeah.
So I think what Burger and the team has been doing on the agency is like an example of modern UX approaches.
Yeah.
And the more we can like tackle some of these core systems,
And I mean, it's all about simplifying and unifying without dumbing the game down.
Yeah.
You know, it is still it's a game that should be easy to learn but hard to master, and that's the key, and that's kind of what that's basically kind of the flag that the UI guys have been kind of running under in this effort. And we've seen with the new agency and also activity tracker. I mean, people are starting to dabble into all sorts of new things they hadn't done before, because they're just browsing around in the agency and they can read about it and like, oh, I've never had the guts of asking what this system is about, and here's a little blurb and how I can get there, and now I found something new to do.
I actually love the activity tracker. It's like
that like feeds directly into your life.
Absolutely. It's like I use Strava to manage myself. I use the activity tracker for everything.
Lighter note question. Like, you showed the square of the cube of corpses. Like, one thing that has been bothering me is that all the corpses are the same one, and there's some low poly model, probably 10 years, 12 years old by now. Are we going to see some more diverse corpses, maybe looking like the avatar that you created meticulously at the beginning of your journey?
I would absolutely love if we could do that. There is an issue with rendering characters in space that we've actually been poking at that problem.
Yeah, maybe with DirectX 12.
Yeah, maybe with DirectX 12. This will open up new doors for us. But
well, if death is a serious matter,
yeah,
then corpses seem to be a serious matter.
Yeah. But these things that personalize the game, I'm very fond of them. Those, like, I have few systems that I really love. Like, I love the decoration system, the metals. But I always have to Google how to find it. It's like so well hidden, but it's a fantastic system. And one of my main characters, I'm in a small co-op with another CCP, and we spent a lot of money on giving each other really stupid metals for really stupid stuff we've done in game. I really love the bio. I can hang outside Cheetah for hours, just clicking people and reading bios. Sadly, majority of people just use them as a dumping ground for information they need for
for the damage resistance.
Yeah, damage resistance and stuff like that.
Don't need it anymore.
Yeah, but the newest favorite is when you mutate a module, you get the name of the person who mutated the module underneath it. I love that. I actually I think it's fun mutating stuff, but it's almost become like more of like my activity tracker is trying to find a good set of modules made by the same person. That purist.
There should be a boost for that.
Yeah.
There should be a boost for that.
The ships, who built the ship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From where?
Yeah, it's actually interesting with this, the modules and the ship, is because the database has two representations of items.
Yeah.
One is type and quantity, and one is a singleton.
Yeah, and the mutated modules are singletons.
Yeah, and actually we could have more just use them more as singletons today, probably. Should we make progress on the topics?
Yeah, I think we're
yeah.
What you can do to help us help you. Hellmar.
Well, I mean, this element of the new players, I think, EVE Online, when you look at our own new player experience, compared onboarding into a player-run new player experience, it's day and night. I think EVE Online is alive today because of player-run new player corps and the work that has been done on that front.
Yeah.
So that is by far the biggest help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, feedback, bug reports and feedback. We actually, it helps a lot. And sadly, new players are not posting those bug reports.
No, it's actually, of course, I mean, we get a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't get a lot of feedback from players about new players. We have actually installed a program at CCP which is called the Meet and Greet, where we've gotten veteran EVE players to greet new players and give them little ships when they meet them. And that has been a wealth of insights into what is actually
going on
with new players and what new players are struggling with.
Yeah.
And it's often much smaller things than we think. So all the things that you have been doing on this front has been massively helpful. And now that we are more focusing on this area, then giving us feedback and ideas on how we could better onboard 500,000 people per year into this universe, that is by far the most helpful.
Yeah, it's also been really interesting going through and learning from new player corporations how they do their onboarding, because I mean, in some cases their onboarding is way better than our onboarding. And
it's also
the systems they have.
It's painful to see what they do to do it. Like you see the Excel sheets and support tools new player organizations have to be able to do this. It's on one hand inspiring to see the work that people go through, and on the other hand it's like, oh my god, the pain we're inflicting on people on both sides.
Yeah, but I think it's I love that picture.
Yes. I'm sure Cowdy hates it.
I think Cowdy hates it, yeah, but I mean it's actually been really interesting going through the new player experience and doing it again and again and again and again and again. And we're actually finding a lot of like quirky things that we're just kind of, as EVE players, we're so used to kind of those strange interactions.
Yeah.
And you don't really see them until you get like new set of eyes to look at them. And the smallest suggestions, I oftentimes I'm baffled that I hadn't thought of it. One thing that's actually just hit CC yesterday is we're testing out a new thing called fitting warnings, where you actually get small, when you fit your ship, you get like a small white exclamation mark, yellow exclamation mark, or red exclamation mark if your fit is wrong or doesn't function or work. And like it's one of those things that, of course, it makes perfect sense. Like, how can I live without it?
Yeah.
Question from the stream?
Oh,
yeah.
I had a sort of a suggestion sort of thing about the new player experience. You're saying how much work these new player entities put in. I've been in an academy, I've run an academy, and it is a lot of work. It's a ton of work. Surely a way to actually help those guys is to signpost these new players to them. Yeah. They're there already with a structure. It's getting them to it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we have something on the books there with the Fleet Finder, which is a way to create a breadcrumb trail into that. We have a built-in bias about being scared of favoriting any corporation over another.
Yeah.
And while that's good on the veteran side, that we try to be as unbiased as can be, we need to get out of that bias when it comes to new player organizations. Even though, I mean, you could, like if you start to work more concretely with some of them, okay, maybe you're not working as much with all of them and all those things, but we just have to go through and live through those mistakes rather than have the fear of like we can't show favoritism. And I just think we need to, identify, it's not that we need to identify, we know who they are, and just work much closer with them without having this fear of like we're showing some favoritism for that. It's a big, huge topic, it's a big, huge strategic initiative. An extreme amount of hard work has been done by the player community. We need to embrace that and just get out of this fear about like we're showing favoritism. We just put the specific ones in the Fleet Finder and they're just here and they are validated because we have decades of data to just show people are doing awesome work.
So I've mentioned this to Des before at other events. You did a thing with Twitch recently. Well, say recently in the last year, where streamers could come and try Eve and whatever deal they had with Twitch they had. I think that was an invaluable resource to see how new players physically react, because you can see these streamers on screen playing the game. And instead of you guys playing it 100 times thinking, why are they not getting this? Actually visually seeing someone struggle, I think would be a valuable resource. Would there be plans to do that again?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, we are doing user testing in-house now, and it is actually great content. I mean, it's sometimes painful to watch.
But interesting you mentioned this. We didn't do it for that purpose, but to do like public user testing.
Public user testing.
And would be I can just see, like, get a few game designer in a meeting room, get our streamer to go and play the game, and just go through the narration of it happening. That would be a gruesome experience.
It would be a painful experience for the pod designer.
That's a great idea.
You have to
Stream the designers then as well.
in a different room.
This is now like a reality TV show.
Oh, it's like a Japanese game show. It's like.
So
On the forum of guiding players to the new player-friendly corporations, I must say that when I recently rolled in Eve and started a brand new character, No Ties, it took them less than a day to actually write me an Eve mail to tell them, like, hi, we're Pandemic Horde. In this case, we're Pandemic Horde, and this is who we are, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, they tend to find new players pretty quickly, is my experience.
Yes, I think that's true to some extent, but there is this reputation of EVE Online that everyone in EVE Online is out to scam you.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people. I mean, in this case, you know what Pandemic Horde is, and you become, okay, maybe I'll try that out. Okay, or no. But if you're a genuine new player, you won't know the difference between that and that. And just the anxiety about, like, okay, I've heard that the community is out to get you, which is not true, but it is a certain impression. Like I said, we need to get out of our fear of favoritism and this bias, and we just need to walk into this domain of being just much more deliberate on this front, and just do that and deal with the consequences, rather than sort of tiptoe around the problem of, like, no, we can't do that, we can't show favoritism, and here we are after 16 years with people doing, like, crazy amount of work to save the game, and, like,
but it's also
stop.
It's also not kind of showing you good corporations to start with. It's not, and, like, you know, hey, these are good started corporations. Like, it's not. It's also about breaking this, like, barrier of, you know, taking the social step. It is a very difficult step.
Yeah, it's
in, like, kind of, you know, saying hello in local for the first time is a difficult step.
Yeah.
And joining a corporation is like, you know, you create, like, a mountain of you know, worries and failed expectations, kind of.
Will they laugh at me?
Will they laugh at me? Yeah.
Nothing local.
Well, I have a kind of question. I rolled a new character a few years back, and I've been also trying to bring some new guys in, but being in a kind of high skill point, high kind of play style of game, it's really hard to bring noobs in, and there comes this skill point gap. Because you ask them to do something, and I can do that in 2 months. So and currently, like, the skill injectors, they help you make alts, but new guys don't have the money unless they buy tons of plex. They don't have the money to get that cap. So I find these new skill point things even tedious, very functional in a way. But is there any other ways to kind of close in a regular and, like, a real new player to get that real capital of skill points a little bit faster?
Yeah, so I mean, skill injectors were massively good in at least being an antidote against the impression that there is no way to catch up. even okay. I think buying all the skills is something like $30,000, which is obviously a lot of money, and nobody does that. Well, somebody has, but not everyone does. Is that then at least you have a way out of the impression that there is no way to catch up, because before there was just impossible to catch up. It was just a physical unreality. There's no way of doing it. But what you are saying about like particular play styles and bringing in people and things like that, there might be ways of like giving you a fixed moment to try something out for a time box, something like that in some context somewhere in the world, not everywhere. Like there are ways to do it without like breaking the value of skill points that people have accumulated over time, or creating something where noob characters all of a sudden are tipping the scales in fleet fights.
Yeah, but we've also been experimenting with things like, you know, double training weekends, you know, kind of gaining skill points through action. The latest one was, of course, skills for kills, where you got a small number of skill points for the first kill you made each day. So it's kind of incentivizing people to play and gaining skill. And I mean, we are doing tests like that with kind of, you know, early retention and your early life. We're doing those tests with that in mind. And there could be an interesting avenue there where you can accelerate your training up to a certain point as a new player by being active and, you know, participating in the game.
It actually was before we released the game. Then we had a Taskmaster inspired by Ultima Online. Like we were all playing Ultima Online. Ultima Online is a massive inspiration for EVE. And the gaining progression through doing was very much a feature of EVE Online. And it's actually macroing, hitting a doll with your sword is actually the inspiration of the offline skill training system of EVE, because we all left our macros running, came the day after, and you have accumulated progression over the night. It was such a good feeling. Then it was like, okay, let's make a system that does that.
Yeah.
And it's actually, the EVE skill system could be better to capture all of that feeling, because sometimes your macro broke, so sometimes it didn't work and you didn't have the skill points. So if there was variability in how many skill points you would accumulate, it would more capture the feeling. But in any case, the activity of doing things, giving you skill points, we had programmed that whole thing into the game. We had to take it out because the database couldn't handle the load of doing it. So it is very much has been a part of the thinking to make progression more an active process.
Yep.
It won't fix the issue you're talking about, which is just like you want to take people to here and they're here. But something like a time box in limited on a certain place might be a way to do that. But yeah, I mean, these are all the elements we have to take into the new player experience challenges. And some of those require solutions which are out of our comfort zone.
Definitely. Go to the next topic.
Yep.
Identity in EVE Online.
Yeah.
Who are you in EVE Online? Is your EVE identity more true than your real identity?
I'm more interested in like the next picture you have. Like, what is that?
It's like a Karl Lagerfeld
Yeah.
taking his little dog out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is about what we've been talking about, like variability of ship skins,
Yeah.
the ability to vary your colors in terms of what your allegiance is. I think we are burying way too much the actual character.
Yeah.
The corpse is not your character.
Yeah.
You don't really see the character that much in the experience. You don't have to go full on like ambulation in bars in space stations.
Yeah.
We have the characters, we could do more with them.
And it's also, I think there's also something in this notion of like, I'm not shooting a Karakar, I'm shooting Hellmar.
Yeah.
There's something there we should definitely push further, and this make it more personal, make it more, you know, I am killing you, not the ship that you're flying.
Yes.
It's yeah.
I think, and what we were talking about gender identity before.
Yeah.
Like the Indians had 5 and we have 2.
Yeah.
21,000 years, there must be more.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of stuff like that where we're not being sci-fi enough.
No, and I think I think there's so many great potentials that we can push things in, and I think, and you know, we kind of laugh over the cat ears question, but I mean it's a question we get every event.
Absolutely.
And you know,
I
people
said
want
we
to
should totally have cat ears. The galette, they would have cat ears.
Yeah.
And they would have something beyond cat ears. I don't know what it is, but we should have it.
Yeah, they would have some future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Future animal. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't we do an April Fool's joke with like mechanical cat ears at some point?
Yeah, I think
I've
so.
seen a concept art.
Yeah,
for it. I think Andre Krista had something which like that. I want that. Like, it looks super cool.
Yeah.
On the identity.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Oh, we kind of touched base on there.
Yeah.
One question. Bounties. Identity. Bounties.
Yeah, the bounty system is not working.
No.
It was cool when we did it in Revelation, and that was a very cool expansion trailer idea, all the rollout of it. It is just not, it's not having the intended consequences.
No.
And it's a very clear sci-fi trope of being a bounty hunter. And it's a mismatched fantasy that you can't really, at least not through the system, be a bounty hunter in a real way in EVE. And having that would have notoriety, would have way to form some regulation of some behavior in the world. So it is not an easy thing to solve.
No, it's not.
I remember when I saw the bounty system, it looked like, I thought it would work.
Yeah.
But it's not working. And
yeah, I mean it's one of those things that sound well on paper.
Yeah.
But in reality, it just kind of just didn't hit it.
But it's a lot of identity in Evenline goes into what your profession is.
Yeah.
And the fact that, okay, you can be a space trucker, you can be a miner, but you can't, at least not through the design of the game, be a bounty hunter. And it's a very like clear identity expectation, because so many sci-fi movies are so much about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, Blade Runner is a lot the inspiration, and he's concretely a bounty hunter
I mean, everyone loves Boba Fett.
Boba Fett, of
and
course.
Boba Fett, when he was, developed, it was supposed to be like a secondary shallow character that was just kind of disposal character, but became a favorite.
Yeah. What do we have next, Berger? They're asking us to take more breaks.
Take more breaks?
Yeah.
I had this beautiful pink picture.
Yeah.
Well, I do have time for one more question?
Yes,
from
yeah.
the stream, and then we'll take the break.
Yeah.
The question is, how about
allowing a player to change their race without changing their name? For example, it might happen you started a character 10 years ago. When you return to the game, you don't really identify with that character very much anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting question, and this is actually a conversation we've been having a lot, both on like changing gender, changing race,
mixing
races. That's another thing we've been talking a lot about.
Mixing genders.
Yep. It's hard to mix gender because then you're mixing body socks, which is kind of art tech terms.
Okay.
You're mixing like 3D models, but because we're manipulating the model with the races.
Yes.
But it's definitely I mean I think it's one of those things that have, the world has changed so much in the last 20 years, and this is like one of the things that, I mean, we probably couldn't have foreseen.
It's actually like on that topic,
ago.
like I saw this news story, I don't know, from last year or when it was. So there was a Chinese couple, they had a baby, and the baby was not very pretty, but both of them were very pretty. But that is because they had had so much plastic surgery done to them that the baby was a product of their actual genetics, but they themselves, like beauty treatments are such a huge thing in China and Korea. Well, it's mostly in Korea. Chinese go into Korea to get beauty treatments, and they're so good at it that they didn't know. But it's like, if people are doing this today, and in a way, changing race and changing body types and whatever, then like 21,000 years from now, you would be changing body types and whatever, just as you change your socks.
Yeah.
So, like to be true to the fantasy of the world, then this should just be allowed.
Yeah, there should be way more fluidity. I think.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
short break and then last couple of topics.
Yes. Good plan.
All right, and we're back. 3 hours, 42 minutes, 33 seconds.
We have coffee.
We got coffee.
Yeah.
Whew.
That was a big improvement.
A huge improvement.
Yeah, I can go for another 3 now.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we?
We only have 2 topics left to cover.
Okay.
But we can talk forever about these topics.
We can,
Yeah.
indeed.
So the second to last topic for today is community. And I actually want to take this, we've talked a lot about community here today and, the fantastic EVE players that make the game and the game, wouldn't be much without the community. And it's actually been this has been an interesting year with not doing Fanfest in Iceland and kind of moving to the World Tour. And it's been really interesting kind of getting closer to players through that because coming to Iceland is epic and fantastic and amazing event, but actually going to the players, it kind of lowers the burden of having to pack your bags and fly to Iceland.
Yeah, it's been very kind of different, I have to say. I remember first when we made Fanfest kind of like we were in my office. It was Nathan and Ali, and we were talking about some outbreak on the forums.
Yeah,
and it was something. How we're going to interface with this current floor du jour problem that was going on. I don't even remember what. And I said something like, "I wish we could just invite them over." And then, like when you have like Nathan and Ali in a room. Yes, let's do that.
Fantastic idea.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Yeah,
now.
let's do it when Airwaves is. It was Ali said that. And then we got people over in 2004, people came, and it was extremely more productive than talking to people on the forum.
Yeah.
Obviously we have the CSM, we have all these mechanisms. But Fanfest has now become such an institution, and there's a particular type of player that comes to Iceland for Fanfest, and there's a particular mode, there's a particular context that the feedback starts to be unidimensional. CSM also becomes a function of the way it is populated, like it is a democratic process. People come in there with certain agendas and it becomes a certain institution, limits feedback in a way. I found it very refreshing now going around the world on the world tour, coming here to Finland, where there's a particular type of focus, energy, which is very different than when I was in Australia.
Absolutely.
I was actually super inspired by going to Australia, and I learned many things about EVE and about our players by being there. One thing in particular I learned in Australia was, it came out from many angles, is that Australia is so sparsely populated that people are very disconnected in Australia. So there were a lot of people in rural Australia playing EVE Online to connect with other people. And I thought EVE Online was more an urban thing. I thought our players were more in cities than in rural areas. And I actually took a look at it, and it's just not the case. Like EVE Online is not as much of a city game as you think. I took a look at how many people we have in London, for example. Not a lot of people in London. There's a lot of people in the UK. There's just not as much in London as I thought they were. And that was a new dimension. Then it was like, I don't know, talking to Australian players in particular, which are, I don't know, there's some special specimen of hardcore players in Australia. I think Australia is just a hardcore concept to begin with. Like the spiders, the snakes, the whatever, crocodiles and sharks and like
too much sun, too much desert.
Yeah, exactly. It's a country kind of like Iceland out to get you. But it has just more tools. Like we don't have half of this in Iceland.
No.
So as a result, they're rather hardcore. And I remember, like, I don't know, we've been dealing with this cloaky camping thing for like ever. Like our customer support channels are full of this cloaky camping thing. And I'm like, why is this a problem? You don't understand the logic of the problem. Because why are people so irritated by watching a cartoon in your chat? Which is what it ultimately is. But when I understand the psychological extortion and pain it causes by feeling it from talking to the seriously hardcore people, it's like, why are you so afraid in somebody in your chat? And it wasn't until I understood it's the agency problem of like, you can involve so much emotional pain without having any recourse back, And I understood this logically, but like feeling the visceral pain about this was like, okay, it's not just a fake problem, it's an actual problem.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, I mean, I for all my engagement with players over decades, I was not able to really get it until I was there in Australia with all the spiders and snakes and hardcore EVE players to understand this.
Too much sun and too much desert.
Yes. So I've certainly, and like here in Finland, it's a different way to sometimes get often the same feedback, but in a context and with emotion that certainly has driven me to more action than before.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely, it's been a lot of work, and creating keynotes every few weeks is not the really sustainable business.
My wife was asking me, why are you going to Finland? Hellmar, you've been traveling like God knows what. Why are you going to Finland? Well, to do Fanfest at home. No, that's not the question. Why? Why are you going? Hey, sauna.
Yeah, sauna, definitely. Yeah, but what I've actually, what I've really enjoyed is kind of, giving all these talks and meeting all these people, like just, being so close to our community and feeling kind of the real difference between like, there's a certain feel in Holland and kind of, the Benelux and Germany. It's like, there's a different feel to a EVE player there, and they're kind of, where it's a slightly different. And like, then you go to Vegas and that's way more rowdy and like, it's standing on stages in Vegas is a little bit like a cage fight.
Yeah.
You're basically like, you're just like dodging questions right and left and, and then you go to Finland and there you can just like talk for hours and people like take everything in and analyze it properly. And it's been like you said, a lot of hard work, and it's been very different, and different in a good way. But I actually look forward now coming out of all that and like having some epic Fanfest. In Reykjavik.
Reykjavik 2020, April, it is on. Yeah. After all this.
Yeah. And actually Fanfest in Reykjavik is also super important for us. It's such a great moment to kind of, you've kind of been staring at the same problem for months, and that problem kind of consumes all your waking hours, and just getting like players out to Reykjavik and just pulling you out of that ditch and allow you to kind of see the amazing thing that we've created. It's really, it's super energizing for development.
Yeah.
But it's also been great. We've been sending a lot of developers all over the world this year, and a lot of people have seen.
Yeah, and I guess my takeaway out of some of this is that often we talk about the EVE community like it is its own consistent one thing.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not like that. Intellectually, you know it. Just like like, I don't know, the European Union is not a consistent thing.
Yeah.
There's like Italian and Swedes are not very consistent with each other. And you know this, but when you experience it through getting these different slices of like how different the conversation is in each place, it gave me a bit of sort of thought about like, okay, are we getting too unidimensional inputs into our process? Because when you zoom a level down, it starts to be very different.
Yeah, and it kind of feeds into this topic we were talking about earlier, where you don't look at EVE Online as a house, but you look at EVE Online as a city.
Yeah.
It is kind of these multiple pockets of different cultures that come together and create this dynamic place that New Eden is.
Yeah.
But it is like my house is way different from your house.
Yeah.
And what happens in the shadows here is something
Yeah.
you will never know about.
I think we have, as a company, fallen victim a little bit too. Here is the organized list by priorities from the community, and there is no such list.
No.
Like when I talk to players in Australia, when I talk to players in Finland, it is very different conversations.
Yeah.
And they're much deeper. They're much more specific and detailed in their individual topics. So I've been inspired by kind of going almost like a level deeper.
Yeah, and it's also because the game is so dynamic and the community is so dynamic and it's so fluid and it's ever changing.
Yeah.
So actually sitting down and meeting people and talking, it's amazing kind of, the biggest problem in the world 3 months ago is a has-been now.
Yeah.
And
it's also, I found it interesting because when you're doing Fanfest in Iceland, you're in Iceland, you live in Iceland, people are coming to you.
Yeah.
But in the world tour, we're going to them.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Oh yeah.
Like even just the context of being there.
Yeah.
Like it's more full immersion, I found.
Yeah.
And certainly it was full immersion here last night when we were in the sauna. Like I would never do that in Iceland. I just go home to sleep.
Yeah, I can confirm that this sauna actually can house 10 people.
Yes, exactly. We push the limit.
We push the limit of the sauna.
Yeah. Should we take questions on this or?
Community-related question.
Yes.
Question from the stream is: do you guys know when the EVE London tickets will be going on sale?
Next week.
Next week from the back of the room. Cool.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, sure. So, you've had your first taste of going out there and meeting players all over the world. Is it something that personally, as CCP Hellmar, is it something that you're going to keep on doing now that you've got your first taste?
So this is not my first taste. I've gone to Vegas, we've done events all over the world, so I've gone there before. But now, when we're doing them in such diverse places, often this was kind of like, well, I've never gone to Australia. And going to a place like Australia, you're so much out of your element, and it's such a eerie feeling being there. It's like being on another planet. It's so isolated. And there's just experiencing discussions about EVE Online in such a different place and context inspires you differently than before, and it's just amplified when you're doing it in Australia, in Finland. I need to go to Russia. I've done it in China. I've done it a lot in America, because often we do these things around trade shows. I obviously travel a lot, so I meet a lot of EVE players. There was just something about this different concentration. And I think, to your question, am I going to do more? Yes, absolutely. But what are we then going to do with this World Tour concept meets having a Fanfest in Iceland? Yeah. Because doing both, like, we will just be on the road for...
Yeah.
Yeah, and who's going to
I hope my wife is not watching this.
Yeah, exactly. And who's going to then do our actual jobs
of
trying to make sense on the other hand. But... and we will do some post-mortem of all of this, or retrospective, once we just finished all the World Tour. What do we then do for next year? We're certainly put down. We're going to have FanFest. It's going to be in April. So we will have to do some big summit meeting of what do we then do going forward based on how we learn. But definitely I will be going more, having these kind of deep dives into segments of the community, whether it's by country or by play style or by some other demographical variables.
But it's also been because this new keynote every few weeks. It's also kind of pushed us in different directions, like really looking at like, hey, what is our message? Like, how do we communicate? How do we talk at these events? Like, this format here is a brand new format we haven't tried before, and I'm actually enjoying it a lot, even if it's like getting close to 4 hours of streaming, and I can see like the stream team being like shaking because they've held the camera for so long. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's even to that point, because one of the things we decided not to do in the World Tour, and we have now decided just to do way less of, is this endless presentation of roadmaps. Because when you have 5 events, you cannot do the same roadmap 5 times. It just doesn't work. And we have just learned from the experience of testing various things on these roadmaps, they just don't work very well. And it's not just for us. They don't work well for any company. All companies are mostly stopped talking about their future developments. They talk about what they're doing, and then they announce what they're doing, and then it comes out next week. There used to be, when we were starting EVE Online Journey, this idea of talking about future development of products was almost like a design pattern you could follow. Everyone has stopped it, because what it puts you into caring more about the future than the present.
Yep.
And this has made CCP obsessing about our development roadmaps. That has caused the stagnation issue we're dealing with in the actual game. Because our eyes are always about, like, what are we developing? And if I look at the track record of some of our development recently, we often spend enormous amount of time doing new things.
Yep.
We release them to the game. I look at the metrics. It just didn't make any difference. Then we do something like Local Blackout, which is not a lot of work in the sense of roadmaps, but it has massive impact. And we can debate whether they're good or bad, but at least we are having an impact on the situation. So by forcing us into, okay, what do we talk about events if we're not talking about roadmaps? And what we have been talking about is data, insights, studies about the world, getting that dialogue going, backstory for sure.
I mean, we have 16 years of content, and a lot of it is, I mean, doing kind of the archaeological, studies of just going through and, looking at old screenshots and old design documents. I mean, it's actually been really good and healthy, because you start to kind of give people context to why we're here and how we got here. And
even the Katia Sai in Amsterdam, like we were, maybe we would have done it, but that then gives space for us to pay a lot more attention about what's actually going on in the world by elevating that into these platforms, because it's super interesting and valuable stuff.
Yep.
And sometimes we're just too distracted about, like, okay, what is our roadmap? How is it tracking? Always talking about that. When most of the energy and value of the game is in the elements which are actually happening on TQ every minute and every day.
Yeah, and it has allowed us to allow the now inspire the future.
Yeah.
What are the issues going on right now, and allow them to prioritize for the future, rather than like going on stage and promising a space elevator.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, it starts to become its own thing, because we have Fanfest and because we have an event. Now we have to decide some content in a development sense to put on a stage. And often that is based on a moment in time that becomes a 3-year roadmap that then becomes invalid a year later, because everything around the game has since changed or inside it.
Yeah.
So I actually like the energy which we're now in after all this, getting more precise feedback in different contexts, talking more about what's going on in EVE, what players have been doing, the history and all the things which are going on, and less about this in the next expansion, this is coming, and then we just put you in the place of waiting for 6 months, and only half of it comes.
Yeah.
So
Would you say that on a management level, which both of you are members of, that you are currently working more agile, as the term is in software development, as you both know, than what you used to be? Like,
we're definitely working in less of a kind of panic mode that we're under delivering because we have to scope everything back. We had made big promises, and now we have to figure out how to kind of work around the big promise. So that's eased a lot of things in development. But of course, like any change, these changes are quite hard and they take time to kind of settle in. And there is a lot of there is still a lot of push to talk too much about some things. I mean, I definitely think that some features should be talked about and we should announce them, before, and we should put them on test servers for longer periods of time. But there are also features that should just happen. We shouldn't. It's not, because in many ways, we're just the caretakers of EVE Online. EVE Online is its own beast and has its own life in a way. And just like how players are writing their own stories, the game itself is also writing its own story.
Yeah, it's and it's also like there's even a little more going on than just being more agile. Like it's only a year ago where we changed the management of EVE Online completely. Like Bergur has been a creative director now for just over a year.
Just over a year.
Sveinbjörn has been EP for just over a year. Eirun has gone a lot more involved from the marketing side. I myself have gotten a lot more involved, which I mean,
we kind of just needed you because we all started our job
exactly
3 days before we were supposed to start our job.
Yeah. So we have like a very different management team running EVE now than we had before, and that difference doesn't manifest immediately because you have to survey the landscape. I spent a lot of time last year playing EVE Online to get kind of current field data from the game. And especially the early game, because my experiences from EVE past are just like they're EVE past, exactly. They're not the EVE we have today. I was quite inspired by how crappy the early experience is, in a way of like, oh my God, there are so many good bits here. But if we could just orchestrate them in a way when I know how to consume them, because I know they're there, and by going through it, it's like, this actually could be so much, it could be so good. We have many good bits. So we have now spent, I don't know, maybe the first 6 months, we're just kind of getting on top of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But now we are restructuring everything around EVE. We're changing the process, we're changing the structure of the team, changing the attitude.
Changing offices.
Changing tech bases. It is just like, I don't know, it's like the game is going through some catharticism. It's like it's like it's been in a cocoon and now it's breaking out, and it's like, is it a butterfly or a spider?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I went to Australia, they're pretty scary.
But like, I mean, it's pretty scary it is a scary process, but we're definitely starting to see kind of the benefits of this change, and it's amazing to like, all of a sudden you start to see, the passion that, the incredible passion our developers have, and like, the passion they've poured into a lot of amazing products and features they've made, and now they're starting to see kind of the beauty of the things that we're doing now, and kind of the passion and yeah.
It's actually, if you tie into the next one, it actually goes a lot into this. Like, when we are CCP, we are developers, and we're presenting roadmaps and feature sets and design problems and things. It's like we're talking about EVE Online like a toy. Like, it's a toy, and it has these things, and here's 2.0 version of the toy. And EVE Online is much bigger than that. It is like, it's a phenomenon. We were asking earlier about like people being inspired by EVE, and I mentioned Dean Hall and all that. Like, EVE Online has materially changed the context of computer games. Like, it just has. It's not because it's in my own personal interest to say that. It just has. Like, the world would be a worse place if it weren't for EVE Online. And I just deeply, genuinely believe that. And it's not just my opinion. I hear it everywhere. And it's almost like a documented fact by now. And then when we're talking about it as developers, as a toy, we're going to have this thing, we're going to fix this. It's like we need some more inspired way of having EVE Online sort of come out of its past into its present and start to kind of evolve itself on its own almost. And then us sort of going beyond the fourth wall and stop talking about it as a toy and allowing the world more to evolve as a world with you guys in it, where our agency is a little bit like when we did with Upwell.
Yeah. Like,
Upwell was making the citadels and upgrading the firmware. Like, those were cool things. Those were like something we should be doing. And what we're doing now, like with the drifters and the blackout and these things, it's a world. Some things in it just happen. because like in our world, like some things are controlled by, I don't know, God, the government, your employer, whatever, and the highest agency, like God doesn't release patch notes about like here yeah, and not that I have some God complex, or maybe I do, but yeah, exactly, it's spiders now fly. Exactly. Exactly. Like
I would like to see that Reddit.
yeah, spiders can now fly. Jesus Christ. It was an Australian that said that. Yeah. So, there are aspects of the world that should move in that domain, and they're just out of control. We don't know them. EVE is not equipped to do it right now, fully. It has elements which move out of our control. I want to see things happening in EVE Online where I go to Berger and it's like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
And you say,
I have no idea.
yeah.
And we have
Is it okay?
Yeah. And we have those elements starting to creep up
Yeah.
here and there, where things happen that we have no control over.
Yeah.
And it is it's a beautiful conversation with developers when when you tell them like, let's just give the game control. It's a super scary thing because you've been in control for 15 years and all of a sudden it's like kind of taking its own life and just running with it and you just have to play catch up in a way.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be afraid of it.
No. We used to be.
We used to be very afraid.
We used to be a bit of control freaks.
Yeah.
Now it's more kind of letting it go.
Yeah.
Where will it go?
Where will it go?
Yeah.
I think 3 hours, 50 minutes, 30 seconds. I think we're hitting
hitting our mark.
Hitting our mark.
Yeah. We did a marathon under 4 hours.
We did a marathon under 4 hours. Isn't that something?
Oh wait, there's more.
Do like a couple of questions and then.
Okay.
Now I just forgot mine. As you were talking about the stuff that just randomly happens in EVE Online and the immersion of that behavior, do you have some examples for us? Like one of those things that basically Hellmar went into your office and goes like, what happened? And you went like,
I mean,
NPCs fighting NPCs.
NPCs fighting NPCs is a favorite story by now, where we Blood Raiders attacked an Amar mining fleet, and then drifters showed up and annihilated all of them. No one won that fight.
Certainly not the servers.
Surely not the servers, no. And our CCP Explorer came and his face was not happy. I mean, drifters invading space. I mean,
that was not fully in control.
That was not fully in control.
There were some interesting behaviors there that
and
they did on their own almost.
That they invented is I don't know how much control was in that either.
No.
And I mean, taxes going up because of strained money supply to Concord.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I mean,
Concord running out of money.
Concord running out of money. I mean, there is a lot of things that.
Yeah.
That
so
write itself.
There are examples of this. Most of EVE Online's serendipity has been in the social domain. Like most of elements where we say like what the fuck is due to players have done something amazing with EVE Online. And of course that's amazing is the reason why the game is here, and we're certainly not taking that away, at all. But the world itself needs to inspire everyone also.
Yeah.
And we have just too much relied on that aspect, which makes us a little kind of, I wouldn't say lazy, but it's not our best thinking goes into that domain, because we're inventing tools for allow people social organization at scale, and we've invented a lot of tools to do that. Mm-hmm. And now if we go a little bit more, make the world a little more capable to inspire all of us, then okay, we're seeing some examples which we have to build on.
Yeah.
But I hope we see a lot more like that, where it's not only EVE players, but it's also EVE itself, which is surprising us.
Yeah.
You guys, one last question, and this is from the stream, and I'll just like backtrack to the previous topic that you're talking on. Are there any countries left on your bucket list where you guys would like to host a FanFest on the road?
Oh yeah, I lived in New Zealand for a year, and I love New Zealand. I want to do a FanFest in New Zealand. It's really far away, and it would be a very difficult conversation with my wife and my children that I have to leave to the other side of the world. But I would love to do FanFest New Zealand.
Yeah, I would just love to go to Russia.
Yeah.
I've never been to Russia. Russian EVE players are an extremely particular type of input into the game, very important. I hear from everyone that's gone there to an EVE meet in Russia that it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I really want to go there. So it's not like to put the world there, it's just for me to go there.
Yeah.
I really want to go there. So I need to do something about that.
Yeah, I mean, they're also like, every time you go to an event, you meet players from new countries that you want to visit, and you're so amazed. Like a couple of years ago, I met 3 guys from Puerto Rico, amazing guys. Ended up hanging out a lot with them, and just seeing their kind of view on the game was super inspiring. Yeah.
Exactly. I met 2 guys. Where were they from? They were from Iran.
Yeah,
they were at Vegas. There were 2 guys from Iran, and like learning about like playing EVE Online in Iran. That was like, I don't know, holding a fan event in Iran. But maybe we should do that.
Yeah, and just
I mean,
like
we're here in Finland in a sauna.
Yeah.
Like maybe we should just go to Iran and have a fan event there.
That would be insane. That would be like the craziest
Good
idea
question.
ever.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. How do we get there?
How do we get there?
Yeah, I don't know. We're Icelandic.
Yeah.
Like we're friends with everyone.
Hello, I am from Iceland. Can I come? Why are you here? Because we have fans.
Yeah, we were in Finland.
Yeah,
Let me
we
tell
were
you
in
how
Finland.
to. Yeah, somebody asked the question.
In a sauna in Finland.
Yeah. Okay, Russia and Iran.
Yeah, I like it. So, yeah, I think we're getting to a good point to kind of wrap things up.
We have something.
We have something. We have something for Lauri, our wonderful host.
Yeah.
CCP Curtis has there is no fan event without the mandatory brennivin. So we thought it was fitting to give you some brennivin, some beautiful Icelandic licorice that we both share the love for.
Yeah.
I know it's not salmiakki perfect, but and then some nice Icelandic chocolates.
Yeah.
And thanks for hosting us. It's been really good.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. We're actually gonna change the stream into a somewhat of a slow TV. I guess we've kind of been doing slow TV now for
4 hours.
4 hours. But we are actually like just gonna keep the cameras rolling until they run out of battery.
Okay.
And maybe you will see some.
Is that allowed? We're going to be naked. It's twits.
Naked.
Oh no, we're not naked.
naked.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
there are
we're
terms
not
and
naked.
conditions.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll have to do the.
Is that
Austin
allowed
Powers
in Finland? Is it allowed?
to be naked on television?
Not naked.
Not
like,
naked.
you
Yeah.
know.
I don't know, Lauri. Is it allowed to be? Are we breaking laws by wearing clothes?
Maybe sometime. In the sauna, of course.
Yeah.
In the sauna, of course.
So
Okay, so no filming in the sauna then.
okay. So I guess we have to do the Austin Powers of eating a sausage
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
opening a paper.
Yeah. Who knows? What's the stream? Like,
What's the stream?
Yeah. It's out of control.
It's out of control.
Keep it.
So on that note, we're gonna take a very short break, and then we'll be back with some strange EVE slow TV.
Okay.
Right.